You're referring to the article minors assault, police officers identified. Is that what you're referring to?
Correct, Chair. The article wasn't provided to us, so we've had to look for it in the archives ourselves.
Anyway, you've seen it?
Yes, I've seen it, Chair.
No, I don't see how I can possibly consider
Asifika kuyo.
and possibly, it is, Advocate Hemrod suggested, possibly this aspect, which to some extent it's a housekeeping matter, can be dealt with in chambers at tea time. Mr. Drew?
Baza kuyithetha bona bebodwa.
Thank you, Chair. If I could start by asking my attorney to hand up the small number of documents that were not provided to the commissioners on Friday. They were indicated in the index. We have now made copies of those documents.
Documents that the attorney showed me this morning, that they were not included in the one that was
Fairly.
correct, Chairperson.
Umgcinisihlalo bemchazela okokuba xa kuvezwa izinto ezikumaxwebhu enganikezwanga wona ayivezo loo nto.
Chair, may I say, we only received notice of the amended version of this list of documents to which reference was going to be made yesterday afternoon at about 5. That's when the email came in.
Understand, but the point I'm making,
And Chair, just to clarify, there were two revisions. The first was that documents were removed and the SAPs were provided with a track changes version that indicated those deletions. There were some additions which amount to 3 photographs, 3 PowerPoint slides, and General Mpembe's own statement of 3 paragraphs in length. Those were the two revisions.
when we get to those documents, if
Yes.
he needs time, he will tell us, and his request will be considered.
Thank you, Chair.
Shall we start?
Chair, I have to respond to that.
Document commences, you will be in as good a position as he is to deal with the documents, because you will also have an opportunity to read them. So let's not waste further time. Carry on, Mr.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Major General Mpembe.
Good morning, Advocate.
In the Standing Order 262, which is before this Commission as Exhibit SS2,
Then I'll respond.
of course,
Mandingajonga nje ku-standing order phambi kokuba ndiphendule.
Exhibit SS2, we were given a file of documents to be used by the evidence leaders in cross-examining you, and in that file, it's item number 11.
debriefing reports, etc.
Correct.
Uthi kunjalo ukuba apha kumhlathi we-12 ithetha ngolo hlobo njengoba eyibeka ukuba kufanele kugcine yonke imininingwane yale operation.
And as the overall commander, that was then your responsibility to ensure that this information was all kept.
Correct, and there were also officers that assisted me to do that.
And who were the officers that assisted you? Was there a single person whose responsibility it was to collect and collate all of that information over the week, well, more than a week, that you were, that the JOC was established?
Kwakukho umuntu owaye exelela okokuba nguye ozawugcina yonke lento kwilo lonke lelo viki kusenziwa lento.
That's correct. As I've mentioned, the commanders themselves.
Categories of documents that are before the Commission, and I'd like us to work through that.
May I say, I'm not sure to what extent this witness is au fait with precisely what documents are before the Commission. Obviously, it's a permissible line of questioning, but we may find that he can't help us very much through no fault of his own. But I mention that before you proceed.
General Mpembe, if you look at this list, there are 7 categories of documents that we assume are contemporaneous and are before the Commission. The first is minutes. The second is contemporaneous notes. Then intelligence reports, the plans, records of members, which are the SAPS 15s, pocketbook entries, and then the case dockets. Other than this list that's before you now of these 7 types of documents, can you think of any other types of documents that would have been generated at the time that you were in Marikana?
Nothing.
ayikho enye into endicinga ukuba yayidinga ukuba ibe khona phezu kwezi sezinikeziwe apha phaya emarikana.
If we can then start with the minutes. There are 3 sets of minutes that are before the Commission now. The first of a JOC meeting at 6 a.m. on the 15th of August 2012, that's Exhibit TT3. A JOC meeting at 6 a.m. on the 16th of August 2012, which is Exhibit TT4. And then a JOCCOM meeting at 1:30 p.m. on the 16th of August, which has been exhibited as Exhibit EE. Now, as I understand the process around minuting, and this comes from earlier testimony before the Commission, the minutes were taken by hand by someone present in the JOC and then typed up later. Is that correct?
Njalo le nto kokuba zazibhala ngesandla kuthi emva koko zibhale ngemtshini.
Correct, as I was informed by those that were taking the minutes.
Ngixelela ngolo hlobo nami ngabo babethatha iminutes.
And do you know how much later the document was typed up from when the meeting was held?
No, I don't know, because I was also busy with other responsibilities.
Ngoba ndandibhizi ngeminye imisebenzi ke andazi okokuba kwathatha ixesha elingakanani phambi kokuba zifakwe emshinini.
And do you know what happened to the original notes that were taken at the time of the meeting?
Awunalwazi lokuthi zaphelela apha ezi zazibhale ngesandla andinalwazi.
And as the overall commander, did you give any instruction to the minute takers at these 3 meetings that they must type up the minutes in any particular way? They must be complete, they must be summaries. Did you give them any instructions about how to take the minutes?
Each and every senior officer knows how the minutes they have to be typed and they have to be done, and that it's incumbent with their work.
Ubuzwa kokuba kho imiyayelo ayikhuphana kokuba ibhale kanjani ngendlela egcwele uthi onke ama-officer lawa aphezulu anezikhundla ayayazi le nto.
On the 3 dates, at the 3 meetings referred to in paragraph 1 of this document, that's to say the meeting on the 15th and the 2 meetings on the 16th, who kept the minutes?
Uzwa kokuba kule mhlangano emithathu yagcina nayo imizuzu.
Chairperson, I did explain to this commission that there were days where Brigadier Sibuluki was supposed to keep the minutes, and he did submit the statement in regard to that. And there were also the days where the minutes were taken by Brigadier, where it should be ensured to be taken by Brigadier Pitorius. She also explains.
Yes, sir. I only asked you about the 3 dates here that are referred to. In fact, 2 dates. The meeting on the 15th, and then the 2 meetings on the 16th. I think the evidence was Brigadier Pretorius took the minutes, did she not, on the 2 meetings of the 16th. Is that correct?
Correct, Chairperson.
And can you remember who took the minutes at the meeting of the 15th? Was that also Brigadier Pretorius?
That's why I'm saying there were statements that were submitted.
Yes. You can't remember, but we can get the information from the statements.
Yes.
But insofar as the minutes were taken by Brigadier Pretorius, would you regard it as part of your duty to keep minutes?
No, Chairperson. As I said, the Brigadier knows how minutes are supposed to be kept.
Uthi ugeneral apha kwi-meeting ezimbini ezathathwa nge-16 zika-August thatha nguBrigadier Pretorius wayengena kumxelelo ukuba ayithathe kanjani ngoba uyayazi loo nto ngumsebenzi wakhe. Ezinye akasakhumbuli uba zathathwa ngubani.
Now, General Mpembe, the reason I'm asking about this is because we found some errors in the minutes compared to the other contemporaneous documents, and I'd like to just explore one of those with you. If I could ask you to turn to Exhibit TT4, which are the minutes of the JOC meeting, 6 a.m. on the 16th.
Uthi makajonge kwi-minutes ezithathwa ngexesha lika-6 kusasa ngalowo mini kukho impazamo ezithe zathanda okuba mbonise zona apho.
Yes, Chairperson, I do have TT4.
Thank you.
ndiyiphethe apha kumi TT4.
And then on the first page of that, under...
Is it possible for that exhibit to be screened, TT4?
xa ingafakwa apha eskrinini siyibone.
Thank you.
General, if you could look at the first bullet entry under 2.1, it says, so Lieutenant Colonel Isaacs informed the meeting on the following, first point, that there are currently about 3,000 mine workers that were gathered at the Kopi.
Phaya phezulu kubhalwe okokuba kukho abaqhankqalazi abangamawaka amathathu esebahlangene phaya endundumeni ngelo xesha.
You'll remember, Mr. Leroux, that this point was dealt with when General Annandale gave his evidence. You may have a reason for asking this witness the questions. I won't stop you too soon, but it is a matter that we've had evidence on already.
Uzawukhumbula okokuba uGeneral Annandale wayichaza le nto ngaphandle kokuba kho eminye imibuzo
Mr.
othanda
Leroux, you also
ukuyibuza.
remember that General Annandale said there were errors in the minutes of that meeting, and he then went through it overnight and came back with a version with amendments as he thought were appropriate, and he handed that in as well. So we know about that. But so I don't want to stop you because you may have a reason for asking this witness, but please try to avoid repetition.
Sizayikhumbula indaba ukuba Annandale watsho okokuba kho impazamo ezikhona kwathi ngalobo busuku wazilungisa wazisa ngemini elandelayo masingachithi ixesha ngento esiphambi kweCommission.
Chair, with respect, I must ask for some consistency because the chairperson has made a specific ruling on this issue at day 80 of these proceedings, and you said that you will not allow the same points to be repeated ad nauseum with numerous witnesses.
That's correct. I don't know we've reached the nausea stage yet, and I assume that Advocate Leroux is asking this question by way of introduction to ask something we haven't got. If she isn't doing that, then I will stop her. But thank you for reminding me of my earlier ruling. Carry on, Mr. Leroux.
Uveza umhlekazi umongalana kokuba yayithethwe le nto mangaphindwa-phindwa izinto eseziveziwe uthi umgcini-sihlalo yiyo le nto endiyithethayo njengoku.
Thank you, Chair. And let me progress my cross-examination by saying General Mpembe, General Annandale said that was one of the typographical errors in the minutes and that it should have reflected 300 people on the copy. Could I ask you to turn to the occurrence book, though, which is Exhibit FFF 25, and in particular entry 972 in the occurrence book?
Uyayivuma le nto kokuba wayichaza uAnnandale le nto kokuba kwabhaleka kakubi phaya
Can we be
kwafayilwa.
can we be shown that exhibit as well, please?
Make siyibone nayo phaya kwi-screen le nto athetha ngayo umama uRu.
Yes, Chairperson, I do have FFF 25.
Ndiyiphethe apha kumhlekazi.
And if
What
it's
is
entry
the,
972.
No, we haven't got the entry
72.
972.
On Chairperson, if I may ask, on which day?
This is on the 16th.
Le nto ivela phaya kwimini yange-16.
Yes, I do have it, Chairperson.
And if entry 972 could be displayed, which appears at page 22 of the occurrence book.
So it's a very short entry. It reads as follows. 8:50, situation report. Chopper 2 reported, we can now see it, one plus minus 100 people at Kopi and other on the way to Kopi from the village.
Apho kuvela khona kokuba kwingxelo yayivela kwihelicopter ithi sekuhlangene abantu abangaba yikhulu phaya entabeni abanye baseza bavela phaya ekuhlaleni.
So the point, General Mpembe, is very simple. It's just that the occurrence book, which is also supposed to be one of the contemporaneous documents before this commission, has a different number to even the corrected minutes of a meeting held 2.5 hours earlier. Do you have any comment?
I don't know what my learned friend is referring to. There has been numerous evidence here that the various entries in Triple F25 are not necessarily contemporaneous.
Well, that's not quite accurate. The evidence was that in the hurly-burly, when things were happening very fast at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and reports were coming in, they were written on pieces of paper and only written into the book later on. There's been no evidence that I've heard that there was a problem at 8:50 which caused that entry to be made out of time. But in fact, the point is more complicated than that. The evidence was that the intelligence report was in fact related to 300. And there was a later intelligence report, I think at 12 o'clock, which spoke about 3,000. And it seemed as if that 12 o'clock intelligence entry had been wrongly reflected in the minutes as having been given at 6, which of course indicates, if that's so, that the minutes were only written up after 12 o'clock. General Allendale said it was a typographical error, and he referred to certain other things that weren't correct. But anyway, that point's been quite fully covered, actually. I don't know what you wish to make of it now by way of a new point.
Umgcini sihlalo umchazelo okokuba lento yathethwa yachazwa kabanzi nguGeneral Annandale okokuba iminutes imizuzu lena yabhalwa emva kokuba zenzekile ezizehlakalo njengokuba zibhaliwe zohlukile kolunye kwebhuku nolunye okokuba zabhalwa ngamaxesha ohlukile izehlakalo ezohlukile.
General Mpembe, let me return to the first category of documents, the minutes of meetings. Do you have any idea how many other meetings of the JOC were held of which we have no minutes?
Unalo lwazi okokuba kwabakho ezinye inhlanganiso ezingaki phaya kwiJOC esingenazo iminutes zazo?
I did already tell the Commission.
Sendiyixelile iCommission.
And could you remind me of your answer?
Khawunikhumbuze.
I did say Brigadier Sibuluki, I think his statement is here in front of the Commission, and Brigadier Pretorius were explaining those days when the minutes were not taken.
Ndixelele ukuba i-statements kaBrigadier Sibuluki ne-statements kaPretorius zikhona apha ezichaza kakuhle leyo nto imizuzu eyathathwa nengathathwanga.
Yes, but they relate to just one meeting. What we've done is, having gone through the various statements, and there's no need for the commissioners to note right now, I'll hand up a summary document at the end of this line of cross-examination. We've calculated that there are at least 6 meetings referred to by either the Scott or the Isaacs or the National Commissioner's own witness statements. There are at least 6 other JOC or JOCCOM meetings that we have no minutes for.
Unthi abanye ke baye baveza ndakulikhipha olo xwebhu elithetha okokuba kukho i-meeting ezintandathu ezabanjwa phaya kwiJOC naseJOCOM.
And let me identify those for you. There's a JOC briefing at 8:15 on the 13th of August, which is referenced in the Scott statement at paragraph 6.8.
Wait, Mr. Roux, before you continue, there's a fundamental question you should have asked first. Let me ask it. When there's a meeting of the JOC, are minutes always kept?
Umbuzo yilowo.
Is every briefing minuted? If the National Commissioner comes and she attends a meeting of the members of the JOC and she receives a briefing, is that always minuted?
No, Chapa, I wanted to explain that.
Bendithanda ukuyichaza njengoba eyibuza nje umhlakazi ukuba akuyo yonke into ethethwa phaya xa kufika uCommissioner kuthetha ngento ethize kokuba ibhalwa phansi yonke into.
Can you go ahead with your explanation, General Mpembe?
Explanation. He says that not every meeting is minuted.
Ubuza inkcazelo
When you embark upon a
uyamchaza.
line of cross-examination like this, it's always sensible to ask the foundational question first. Otherwise, a lot of time can be wasted.
Umgcini sihlalo okokuba ukuchazele nje okokuba akuyo yonke into ethethwa phaya ebhalwa phansi.
Ms. Leroux, I also think it was General Annandale's evidence that there are no minutes taken of certain of the meetings. And he was asked, in fact, he was tasked to look for minutes for a particular meeting, and there weren't any.
Uyamxelela kumama uHemraj okokuba yachazwa nguAnnandale lento okokuba wade wabuza okokuba ejonga lezo kwathi kazikho iminutes ezinjengezo.
You see, if minutes have to be kept, and they haven't been, or apparently haven't been, then that's a basis that one can investigate because it raises suspicion. But the premise has to be that there always are minutes. Alternatively, you get a witness to say that in respect of a particular meeting, minutes were taken, and then the minutes don't come. You can then ask questions about that. But just a general question about a whole lot of meetings, where are the minutes when it's not clear that minutes have been or should have been kept? It doesn't help us very much.
Ayincedi ke into yokokuba abuzo kokuba yintoni zingathathwanga iminutes. Xa echaza kokuba zathathwa iminutes ngaleyo mini, into angabuzwa yona ukuba ziphi xa ethi zikhona. Xa ethi azithathanga akunakunceda ukuba abuze uba yintoni zingathathwanga.
General Mpembe, in light of the obligation under the standing orders to have notes taken, to have a record kept of how things occur, what role do minutes play in complying with that obligation?
Baluleke ngantoni iminutes ezi njengoba kusho i-standing order 262 kokuba yonke into xa yenziwa kufanele ibhalwe phansi. Yintoni ukubaluleka kwazo?
Chairperson, the minutes are important whereby the JOCOM is taking place to record every issue that has been discussed, decision making. So the minutes are only there to show the decisions that were taken. But there were meetings where the National Commissioner wanted a briefing, where sometimes we do the briefing in another office, not in the JOC. There is no JOCOM. And those are some of the incidences which have been referred there. So there we don't normally take the minutes because it was just a briefing to the National Commissioner. Or there were some communication between officers, particularly I know Colonel Scott will communicate with General Edendale outside the JOCOM, and he will refer it as, I met with General Edendale. So the minutes will not be taken.
Uchaza ugeneral apho kokuba into ebalekile kwemizuzu ethathwayo kuxa kuthathwa imizuzu apho kuzokwenziwa khona izigqibo ekugqibeleni. Xa kukho intetho nje phakathi komuntu nomuntu kuboniswana njengoScott ethetha nomnye ayinawubhalwa phansi lo.
But Chairperson, I want to emphasize that where crucial decisions were supposed to have been taken, the minutes were taken and they were disclosed to the Commission. And any other meetings that minutes were supposed to have been taken, it was also disclosed to the Commission and explanations were provided.
Ndienda inika lo nkcazelo kokuba apho kuditshana khona kufanele kokuba kuthi ekugqibeleni kuthathwe isigqibo esithize izawubhalwa phansi lo nto njengoba senike ndaveza apha kwi-Commission nokuba leyo mizuzu enjengaleyo ikho.
General Mpembe, if I can then move on to the second category, which is contemporaneous notes. We have the occurrence book and we've had the evidence as to how it's compiled and its reliability. I won't traverse that again. But do you have any other notes that you took in the week from the 9th to the 16th of August or thereafter when you were preparing for other events like the visit of Julius Malema? Do you have any other contemporaneous notes that you took during that period of time?
Buza kokuba khona ezinye inotes azithathana enye imbhalo ayenza kwizehlakalo njengalesi sokuvakasha ukundwendwela phaya enantsike Marikana nguJulius Malema.
No, Chairperson, and on that day I was not in the JOC.
Ndandingekho kwi-JOC ngalo.
On the visit of Mr. Julius Malema.
I think she's moved away from just the JOC. She asked about contemporaneous notes you made. Now, you did give us an extract from your diary, remember, relating to what happened at Potchefstroom, I think. And I assume that your diary, covering the period we're busy with, will also contain notes that you made at the time. Is that correct?
Correct, Chairperson.
Kunjalo njengoba echaza umhlekazi kokuba uye wasibonisa idiary yakhe apha nezinto ezazenzeka napha ePotchefstroom azibhala kwidiary yakhe njengoba ubechaza nje umhlekazi ugeneral kokuba ngale mini kuze uMalema phaya wayengekho yikho nje ingabhalwanga lonto.
General Mpembe, do you still have your diary from the middle of August 2012?
Mbuzo kokuba usenayo na idiary yakhe ephaya kwixesha phakathi kwinyanga kaAugust ka-2012.
Correct, Chairperson.
Ewe na.
And it has not been provided to your legal team or to the Commission?
Awuzange uyinikeze kubameli benu.
Chairperson, I said for the third time that I did provide it and it was circulated to the Commission.
Ndithethe kwesithathu ngoku ukuba ndayinikeza yanikezwa apha kwi-commission sendiyiphinde kwesithathu le nto.
Thank you, General. My understanding is that only the excerpt around Potchefstroom has been provided to the parties. I'll follow up with my learned friends for the SAPs and the evidence leaders and establish if more was provided but not circulated.
Ndiza kuyilandela loo nto ngoba ndive mna kuthiwa njena hayi into eyanikezwa nje zisehlakalo zapha ePotchefstroom.
I can tell my learned friend now that's not factually correct, Chair. She doesn't have
Hlekazi
to
uMadlang
approach us.
umngalwane uthi hayi.
Dropped your voice for the last sentence.
I'm
Akuyonyani le
saying, Chair, our learned friend doesn't have to approach us during tea. I can give her the answer now. What her understanding is incorrect.
What is the correct facts?
Those diaries didn't relate to Potchefstroom at all. They related to events in which the
No,
General
no.
was involved.
He gave us an extract from his diary relating to what happened at Potch, what he said, what other people said. It was in relation to the question of whether he gave instructions. That was put before us as an exhibit. What Ms. LaRue wants to know is whether the rest of his diary, insofar as it relates to the period that concerns us, I take it would be from the 12th of August to after the 16th, whether that's been made available to the parties. If it hasn't been, and they ask for it, I take it you won't have a problem making it available. If it has been, well, then the point will fall away.
intetho ekuthethwa ngayo apha ungevani okokuba le yanikezwa apha zihlakazwa ezazenzeka
It means
ePotch.
that the extract from the diary which has been handed in starts on the 13th, saying he was on leave. My recollection is that things that happened at Potch were written on a page which was not the page of the date of the Potchefstroom meeting. But anyway, perhaps we can get out that exhibit and have a look at it. And in the light of what we see, we will then know whether there's something for Ms. LaRue to persist in, or it's appropriate for us to move on to the next point. Ms. Pillay, can you tell us what that exhibit is?
Uzakusixelela umama opileyo okokuba ibetha eziphi izinsuku.
Chair, it's Triple H9.
Exhibit Triple H9.
General Mpembe, I'd like to now move on to the topic of intelligence.
Mandize apha ke ngoku apha ezobunhlola.
And before this commission is an exhibit TT5, which
Before
is...
you move on, Ms. LaRue, the
Yes.
exhibit is before us. It's actually, I'm corrected, it starts on the 11th of August, if that assists you.
What we've got are pages relating to the 11th of August, the 12th of August, and 13th. And then there's a jump to the 28th. So the section... Sorry, I wasn't being recorded. What we have in Exhibit Triple H9 are extracts from the witness's diary, the pages relating to the 11th, 12th, and 13th of August, and then from the 28th, and then also a page for the 28th of August. Those are the only pages we have.
Exelelwa apha kuba exhibit lesinayo apha idayari. Ibonisa umhla ka-11, 12, 13 isuke apho ibonisa umhla ka-28.
Yes, yes. The 28th relates to what's known as the meeting at Roots, which is the place in Potchefstroom where the meeting was held. But my recollection was incorrect. We did have the pages for the 11th, 12th, and 13th. But of course, we haven't got the pages from the 14th to the 16th and thereafter.
Bendingayikhumbuli kakuhle apho.
If those pages were made available to the parties, then the question falls away. If they weren't, I take it you want them, Ms. LaRue. Is that correct?
That's correct,
Perhaps
yes.
Mr. Ngulwana can take instructions on that and inform you after the tea adjournment what the correct position is.
Ngalamaphepha esinganawo ke phakathi komhla ka-13 nomhla ka-28. Xa kungalawo maphepha owafunayo thi emva kweti sibe sesithetha ngawo bendingakhumbuli kakuhle.
Thank you, Chair. So, General Mpembe, moving on to a new topic that relating to intelligence. Could you turn up Exhibit TT5?
Masiyeke kolo xwebhu athetha ngalo TT5 apha kuthethwa ngezobuntlalo intelligence.
Yes, Chairperson, I do have TT5.
Phethe apha kumhlekazi.
And this is a 3-page document. The first 2 pages come from Brigadier Engelbrecht, and then there's a single page from Colonel Isaacs, Crime Intelligence Northwest.
Ivela ku laoma doda amabini athethwa ngawo amaphepha amathathu.
General, other than this document, are you aware of any other contemporaneous documents that capture the intelligence that was provided to the JOC during the events at Marikana?
Ngaphandle kwalawa ke kukho amanye onalo ulwazi ngawo avezwa phaya.
Before he answers that question, you're not suggesting that TT5 is contemporaneous because it's dated the 28th of August.
That's correct, Commissioner. But as far as we know, this is the only written documentation relating to intelligence, and as we understand it, created after the fact to capture it, but fed into the JOC.
Yes.
And I'm just trying to establish if that was in some other written form at the time.
It's just not being suggested. I just want to clarify that you're not suggesting to the witness that TT5 is contemporaneous, because it's not.
Correct.
Yes.
I'm not.
Uyayivuma ke lento uba ubenze impazamo apho kokuba phepha athetha ngalo lingolo hlobo alichaza ngalo.
And it's clear.
So,
from the
General
evidence
Mpembe, with
that-
respect to the
Sorry,
first 2
Chair.
pages, those
Chair.
are on the
Sorry,
28th.
Mr. Luwana wants to raise a point.
My learned friend also says this is the only intelligence report. It isn't.
I understood it says only one she had. She wants to know if there are others. So, in the light of the objection, reformulate your question. Let's carry on.
Thank you, Chair.
Ubuza okokuba uthi unalo elo kuphela ubuza ukuba akhona na amanye.
General Mpembe, looking at the last page of that document, the document signed by Colonel Isaacs, that is undated. Do you recognize that document? Have you seen that document before?
Eli phepha ndithetha ngalo elisayinwe nguColonel Isaacs alinayo idate.
I think it's correct
I
to say
see
it's
that-
undated. It's headed with a date, 16th August, then the time, noon, and then below, and then it uses the present tense. Situation is currently very tense. So I think it's a fair inference that that the time at the top is the time when the report was made.
Nali livela phaya linalo ixesha nemini lisayiniwe.
General Mpembe, that single page, did you see that document on the 16th of August at around noon?
Walibona
Correct,
ngaloo
yes.
mini.
And what were the circumstances in which you saw that document?
It was in the JOC meeting which I have testified here
Ndalibona phaya
at 6
kwinhlangano
o'clock.
yeJOCOM lendithethe ngayo.
That
Are
copyright.
Are you
the
talking
the
about
documents
this one?
relate. Sorry, let's not talk over each other. That copyright, that document, is headed 2012/8/16, 1200 hours. In other words, it refers to the situation as it was at 12 noon. And that's where you see that there were 3,000 people gathered at the Kopi at 12 noon, which is why those other minutes probably were written up afterwards. And the material incorporated in this document was wrongly included in that one. But let's not worry about that. The point is, you couldn't have seen this document at 6 o'clock, because it appears only to have come into existence at noon or thereafter. So I think you're mistaken on that.
Chairperson, what I wanted to say is that the contents of this document was the one that was said in the JOCOM. But it's correct for the chairperson to say I saw it on the JOCOM meeting of 13:30 when the document was actually compiled at 12 o'clock.
Ewe kunjalo mhlaka
But
ngoba
the-
ndilibone ngo-13:30.
But the contents were the same as that one of 6 o'clock. Yes, chairperson.
intetho yayiphaya kwakuyile yayithethwe ngo-6 kusasa kodwa ngaphandle kokuthi izibalo zazohlukile kwakwenzekwe impazamo apho.
General Mpembe, I understand your evidence to be that the contents, the information that was being fed into the JOC regarding from intelligence, when you received that at 6 a.m. on the 16th, it wasn't recorded in a document. Is that what you're saying? It was reported to you, but it wasn't in a document. This was only for the 1:30 meeting. Is that correct?
Correct.
Ewe intetho yathethwe phaya kusasa ayizange ibhalwe phansi yade yavela isibhaliwe kule nhlanganiso ka-1:30.
And how was intelligence gathered from the 12th to the 16th of August? Could you describe to the Commission how the SAPs went about gathering intelligence that fed into your planning and operations?
It is contained in the minutes of the 16th, 6 o'clock.
Yonke lento ibuzayo ikhona phaya mizuzu yange-16 exesha lakusasa ngo-6 okokuba bezobunhlola ube basebenza kanjani ingxelo bayifuna ngoluphi uhlobo.
But General Mpembe, my question is more general. From the period of time that you were in Marikana, for those days, how was intelligence being gathered and provided to the JOC to assist you in planning and executing your operation?
It was testified to this commission that this was compiled by the different agencies, that is SSA, crime intelligence, and we are boosted by the number of the police officers even from Gauteng, and it was compiled and it was given to the JOC meeting.
Njengoba kuye kachazwa ke apho kokuba bengamaqela amaninzi amapolisa besebenza lento i-SSA crime intelligence nabanye namapolisa aseGauteng bebeza nalezi zinto baziveze phaya kuJOC.
Did someone from crime intelligence attend each JOCCOM meeting and provide the information that had been gathered in the interim?
Correct, Chairperson.
Was that Colonel Isaacs?
It will be Colonel Isaacs on the other days. On the other days, it was Brigadier Engelbrecht.
Onke amaxesha kukho i-meetings ezeJOC kwakubokho ovela kwi-crime intelligence kwakuvamise ukuba ngu-Engelbrecht noma mhlawumbe u-Isaacs ozokwenza ingxelo apho ephathelene nezobuntlolo.
Chair, I'm appreciative of the fact that it's in the interest of everyone to save time and not to waste it. This line of questioning was put to Major General Annandale, and he dealt with it extensively, also pointing out the difficulties that the police were facing in regard to gathering intelligence.
You don't have to mention that point. I assume that Advocate LaRue is asking these questions by way of preliminary to a new point that she wants to make. I've already spoken to her about trying to avoid repetition when doing that. But anyway, you'll take that point aboard into account, Ms. LaRue, as you proceed, I take it.
Ingxelo kumhlekazi ungalwane ileyo kokuba kuchitha ixesha nyani ngoba yonke lento eyabuzwa kuAnandale wayichaza kabanzi umgcini sihlalo uyavumelana naye uthi mhlawumbe kukho iphuzo elithize lisha afuna ukuliveza lo mama.
General Mpembe, when you say that, what I do want to understand is when you say that the intelligence was provided to the JOC, that's not in any documentary form other than what's captured in the minutes or in TT5, correct?
General uthi ingxelo ke eziphathene nezobunhlola ngaphandle kokuba zivezwe apha kwimizuzu ayikho enye indlela ezazibhalwe ngayo.
I said it was provided in person in the JOC meeting.
I take it what Ms. LaRue wants to know is was the information provided orally or was a document containing the information handed in? I think that's the point of her question.
Umbuzo ka Ms. LaRue ba yayithethwa ngomlomo lonto noma yayiziswa ibhalwe phansi.
Generally it was either Brigadier Engelbrecht or Colonel Isaacs. They attended the JOCCO meeting. They gave the information which had been gathered by crime intelligence. And was the information given orally?
Chairperson, in the meeting it was given orally, but I cannot say now it was not contained in the documents. I think Brigadier Engelbrecht and Colonel Isaac can shed the light on that.
ngabo abangakwazi ukuchaza ukuba bayibhale phansi kodwa phaya emeetingini babeyiveza ngomlomo le ntetho ndithetha ngayo ngabo abangakwazi ukuveza ukuba babeyibhalile na.
Thank you, General, and we'll explore that with them. Major General Annandale conceded that the intelligence for the operation was inadequate. What was your view of the intelligence that was provided to the JOC?
Annandale wayivuma ke into yokokuba babengafumani ingxelo epheleleyo ngezobuntlolo babengafumani yonke ingxelo ngawo onke amaxesha. Uthini wena kuloo nto?
I was provided with the reasons of maybe not, let's say, deep intelligence in terms of different, for example, the persons and the activities. Because when we talk about intelligence, maybe we need to be specific, because intelligence is a very wide word. Maybe if you might be specific in terms of the intelligence that you are referring to, then I need also to be specific in terms of my answer. Because intelligence is very wide.
Ukuba apha epoliseni xa kuthethwa nge-intelligence ezobuntlola sithetha ngento ebanzi gqitha xa engatsho kokuba yintoni nantoni engafunyanwanga njengoba ndibuvezile ndiye ndakunikeza izizathu abandinika zona ukuba yintoni bangakwazanga ufumana okuthize nokuthize.
Well, General Mpembe, let me ask the question another way. What intelligence did you want in order to make decisions and planning when you were in the JOC? What type of intelligence did you want in those circumstances?
Umbuzo kokuba ugeneral ke yintoni wayefuna ukuyazi ukuze akwazi ukwenza icebo elibukahle lokusebenza ngalento.
I wanted to know who are the people involved
Andifuna ukwazi uba ngobani aba bantu bakhona kulanto.
in instigating or destabilizing the situations.
Abantu babephembelela yonke lento bebanga olu ngquzulwane.
I wanted to know where they're staying.
Funa ukwazi okokuba bahlala phi aba bantu.
I wanted to know precisely what weapons are they having.
Funa ukwazi ke nezixhobo ezohlukahlukile eziphethwe ngaba bantu.
And I was informed that, and with the occurrence that at Marikana at that time, it was not easy because people got killed.
Yayingelula ke lento eyenzeka ngelo xesha ngoba kwakusweleka abantu pha eMarikana.
Anyone who was just having a cell phone, he was getting killed or maimed.
Umuntu wayefunyanya nje phethe imfonomfono cellphone waye hlaselwa noma abula.
So I was informed that everybody was scared and intimidated for their own life.
Ndaxelelwa okokuba ke abantu boyisiwe phaya ba nokoyika.
Let's start with the first question that you wanted answered. Who was involved? Did you receive that information from your officers who were engaged in intelligence gathering? Did you understand who was involved?
Masiqale ngombuzo uyawuveza kuqala wafumana okokuba ngobani abasemva kwayo yonke lento.
Chairperson, I've already answered that one, and then I also said that we did not know.
Sendiyiphendule lo mbuzo ngeke ndachaza okokuba saba naleyo ngxaki yokungazi ukuba ngobani.
With respect to your second inquiry, which was where were they staying, did you receive adequate information on that inquiry?
Ukubuza umbuzo wesibini okokuba awufuna ukwazi uba bahlala apha aba bantu wayifumana leyo mpendulo.
Chairperson, I did testify that we did not receive either, whether they were in the mountain or whether they were at the hostel, where in the hostel and which room. If they were in the shack or informal settlement, we did not know.
Ndayichaza kabanzi
And the
leyo.
reasons were given why we didn't get.
Izizathu zokuba sabangelwa intoni ukuba singakwazi ukufumana ingxelo kokuba bahlala phi basentabeni basematyotyombe eliphi hostela noma kuphi.
And then finally, with respect to precisely what weapons were involved, did you receive adequate information?
Maqondana ke nezixhobo babeziphethe kukho ingxelo wayifumana ukuba yintoni nantoni abayiphetheyo.
Chairperson, I already testified, and I think it has been put to the Commission, the types of weapons that we did know that they do have, but who was having it and where were their weapons. And those that members of the SAPS were robbed and killed, those of the securities.
Velile ewe leyo ngxolo kokuba kwakuphethwe izixhobo zantoni nantoni ezinye zazithethwe kumapolisa emipu kodwa ke singazo kokuba zikobani ngelo xesha.
And some of those weapons and hand radios of the police and the securities are still missing.
Kude kube namhlanje ke ezo zixhobo zamapolisa neradio ezathathwa kubo ezinye zazo azikafunyanwa kude kube namhla.
So returning to my initial question, which was that Major General Annandale had said that in his view the intelligence that was available was inadequate. Do you agree with that opinion of his?
Ngoku yavumelana nengxelo ke kaMhlekazi uAnandale kokuba yayingonele ingxelo yayifunyenwe phaya maqondane nezobuntlolo kokuba nikwazi ukwenza icebo elikahle.
Chairperson, I said yes, and the reasons why it was inadequate, it was also given.
Ndiye ndatsho kokuba ewe kunjalo ndanikeza nezizathu ezaziyimbangela yaloo nto.
Was it so right up to the 16th?
Kwaba njalo kwade kwaba ngemini yokugqibela mhla
Perhaps I
ka-16.
must ask you the next question so you can deal with both together. From the 14th onwards, probably even from before that, in fact, I'm wrong. On the 13th, you had a lot of photographs, video footage and so on, of people, the people you met at the railway line, who had pangas and assegais and spears and so on. And then from the 14th onwards, these people congregated every day at the Kopi, according to the evidence, particularly militant group in the front. And I take it you had ample photographs and video clips of these people. Is that so?
Kunjalo kokuba ukuya kwexesha ke andithi nge-13 nababona phaya nadibana nabo nge-14 bephaya ikakhulu aba izidlamlilo ezi zazingaphambili nathatha nanemfanekiso yabo ngelo xesha kunjalo.
Correct, Chairperson.
Now,
Ewe kunjalo.
you will remember that initially, when the National Commissioner met the Lonman, they said, we don't know who these people are, they're faceless people, they don't work for us. You remember that?
Ba elon mini yathi ekuqaleni phaya ngaba bantu abangababazi nje kokuba ngobani.
And correct, Chairperson, it was said even in the briefing when the Provincial Commissioner was there.
Yeah, that's right. And then they were shown photographs, and they then conceded that they did recognize some of the people. Remember, initially there was a request for I think it was the shaft foreman or something, foreman and people of that kind to come to look at the photographs. Eventually they conceded that they were their employees. So this story, they were faceless people, they couldn't negotiate with them, collapsed. Now, that's correct, isn't it? You remember that?
Correct, Chairperson.
Kunjalo njengoba
Now, what I don't
etsho
understand, this fits in with what you're being asked, but from another angle. Surely you had photographs of the main people, certainly the militant people, carrying weapons. You had it from the photographs of the 13th, the 14th and 15th. Wouldn't it have been possible for the intelligence people to have sat down with the Lonman people and said, look, who are these are your workers? Who are they? Can you identify them? And if they could identify them, it's difficult to think they couldn't have, so where do they stay? I take it Lonman would have had details of which hostels people stayed in, which rooms they had, even which shacks were occupied in the informal settlement. Isn't that so?
kunjalo na ukuba emva kokuba kwe-13 14 15 senemfanekiso yaba bantu sebakwazile nokubabona uba aba ngabasebenzi andithi loo mini beyinokwazi okokuba ngoobani aba bantu bakwazi nokuba amatyotyomba bahlala kaneni hostel abahlala kuzo zeziphi.
It is correct, Chairperson, but the question, it was just generalized in terms of over the period. It was not specific in terms of dates.
No, I understand that. You see, I understand that there was an enormous amount of intimidation. I understand that if there were people who were sympathizing with Lonman or sympathizing with Num on the Kopi, they might have been afraid to have given information. Even people in the hostels and the formal settlements might have been afraid to give information because there might have been fatal consequences for them if they did that. But I'm not talking about that kind of information. I'm talking about information from Lonman based upon the photographs and video clips of people marching around in public, waving cutlasses and pangas and spears and assegais. That sort of information would have been available. Was it ultimately available by the 16th?
buza kumhlekazi apha kuba hayi ndiyayiqonda into yokuba kwakhuko olukhulu apha kwakho abantu abangeke bakwazi nje ukuba baveze intetho ikakhulu bebonakala bengenum noma bakwa-lawnman phaa entabeni kodwa ke ndibuza uba emva kwemfanekiso le i-lawnman ibenokwazi okokuba ngoobani apha abahlala phi.
Chairperson, the tasking was done to Brigadier Engelbrecht and Brigadier van Zyl that were leading the teams. Maybe I can hear specifically from them that before the 16th, which information they obtained.
What you're really telling us is you can't tell us whether that information had been obtained, and if so, to what extent. Am I understanding you correctly?
Is correct, Chairperson.
Right, thank you.
Chaza ugeneral ukuba yena ngokwakhe akanalo ulwazi lale ngxelo lo ngokupheleleyo uthi aba bantu babenikwe lowo msebenzi ngabo abangakwazi ukuchazela ekomishini ngokugcwele ukuba lwazi luni elafunyanwa ngabezokwenhlolo.
General, was it your view or the view of the police that there were persons other than those that were present at the copy that were responsible for what you call the destabilization?
Ubuzwa ugeneral okokuba ngolwakhe ulwazi ngaphandle kwaba bantu babepha entabeni kwakho abanye yini babephembelela olu ngquzulwano phaya.
Chairperson, since on my arrival, nobody was ever being specific in terms of saying who organizes the marches, who organizes the gatherings. And even when I meet the marchers at the railway line, I could not know whom I was speaking to. So those were the people that one could see, but you don't know who were they, where were they staying. That is what I was referring to.
Uchaza ugeneral ukuba ekufikeni kwakhe phaya akazange kwazi ukuxela uba ngobani aba bantu basemva kwayo yonke lento nelixesha ethetha nabo phaya esiporweni waye babona nje aba bantu angazi okokuba ngobani.
I understand that, but if the video clip had been shown to Lonman, surely Lonman would have been able to come back and say, yes, those spokesmen are X and, sorry, I won't use X, are A and B. A lives in this hostel and B lives in that shack in the informal settlement. That information could have been obtained, I take it.
Into endiyithethayo kuchairman uthi emva kokuba senithethele mfanekiso kukho aba bantu abevela phambili bethetha xa beningabonisa uLonman ubenako uLonman uba lo ngusubani uhlala kwityotyombe elithize kanene uhlala kwihostel ethize.
Correct, Chairperson. That's what I was answering Commissioner Himrash to say when I was referring to I did not know.
No, I understand.
But
and you didn't have to confine your inquiries to those who were the spokesman. There were people in the front row who were clanging spears and pangas together, isn't that right?
And
other people, I think, passing the blade between their lips. I mean, these were people whose identity was important to know, was it not?
Correct, Chairperson.
Was that information ever provided to you? I think you already answered no. Am I correct?
Correct, Chairperson.
You haven't answered the question, was whether there was a thinking among the police that there were certain persons behind the scenes.
Mbuzo ke usengawuphendula okokuba amapolisa abenazona ingcingo zokuba kukho abanye abantu abaphembelela lento abangasi baphaya kwaLonmin babenazo ingcingo ezinjengezo amapolisa ikanene.
It is correct, Chairperson, because the Chairperson will recall when I said that when we confronted Longman, they were also afraid to tell us. They even asked us not to tell the people. So then we were even concerned to say, but why Longman even themselves, they were so afraid. And also not knowing the names and the places as I've mentioned before. Then we were thinking that there could have been maybe some other people that were also involved that were not at Lonmin or any other place.
Nathi sabanazo ingcinga nje emva kokuba sithethe noLonmin safumana okokuba nabakwa Lonmin ngokwabo banoloyiko abafuni nokuthetha baze wathi singabaxeleli nabanye abantu ukuba bacinga okokuba kukho abantu abangaphandle abachuchuzela lento ngasemva basabaphembelela lento ngasemva.
Now the weapons that they were carrying was pretty obvious just by looking at them. what was the concern? What information were you looking for? What further information were you looking to as regards weapons? Did it perhaps relate to firearms, or what was it?
babeziphethe ke zazibonakala ukuba zintoni zazivelile phaya nani nengcingo zokuba kukhona ezinye izixhobo abaziphethe ezifana nemipu mhlawumbe ezingabonakali.
Correct, Chairperson.
Ewe kunjalo.
Thank you.
Enkosi.
Major General Mpembe.
We interrupted you. I think you were busy with a paper trail. Were you not following up the paper trail, existent or non-existent?
Yes, thank
you. You want to return to that line of questioning, or other points you want to deal with?
No, I'm returning to that line of questioning. General Mpembe, with respect to the application for cordon and search of the hostels, which was made, to take place 15-16 August, you've obviously testified that intelligence fed into that plan, which was placed before the provincial commissioner. We'd like to know where that intelligence exists. Is it in another document, or is the only intelligence that relates to the application for cordon and search what's in the application for cordon and search? My question is there another document setting out an intelligence report that fed into that application?
Kwakukho ingxelo evele apha izizathu ezenza okokuba nenza isicelo sokuba kuyoseshwa kuhanqe le ndawo phaya kwi-15-16 ngaphandle kwaleyo kwakhona enye ingxelo yasivelile.
Chairperson, firstly, I did not be told that I'm going to be asked about the cordon and search, which of course is necessary for me to answer. But without wasting any commission's time, I will say I did also indicate to this commission that the word intelligence is very wide. So we need to have either a limitation, interpretation, or whatever, and we need to be specific in terms of the intelligence. But what I said there and what has been contained in Brigadier Khalid's statement, it's what has happened, and which that is also contained as intelligence. The question that there were firearms that were taken from the securities, the issue that there were firearms taken from the police, and as I have already indicated, that we did not know who and which places, so then that's why cordon and search was applied.
Uthi uGeneral akazange axele ukuba uyawubuzwa ngalento ye-cordon and search yokuba kuhanqe phaya kuseshwe kodwa ke uye wachaza okokuba eligama elithi intelligence ezobunhlola libanzi kakhulu apha empuliseni makutshiwo okokuba kuthethwa ngeyiphi ingxenye yalento. Uthi ke uBrigadier Khalid phaya kwingxelo yakhe uthetha ngoba evezwa okokuba kwakuthethwe imipu kwi-securities zasemayini nasemapoliseni.
Major General Mpembe.
Does that mean that the information was not contained in any document? Is that what your answer means?
Ubuzwa okokuba uthi na leyo ngxelo yokuba kuthethwe imipu yayingavezwanga kuleyo ncwadi kwelo phepha.
Chairperson, I still remain to my answer to say that Brigadier Engelbrecht might also be saying that it was contained somewhere in the document, but it was fed in the JOCOM, and as I've said, those were the facts that were known to us.
Ngoba yavezwa lento phaya kwi-JOCOM kwintlanganiso ndinethemba okokuba uEngelbrecht angakwazi ukutsho ukuba wayeyibhalile naphansi kanene yayingabhalwanga.
General Mpembe, let me take a step back. Did you instruct Brigadier Engelbrecht to prepare that application for the search and cordon?
I think you find it was Captain Moolman who was instructed to prepare it, and the founding affidavit was by Brigadier Collins. So,
yes.
Who instructed them? That's the question. I'm sorry. I'm butting in unnecessarily. I'm sorry.
Chairperson, I think it's correct to say that, as I've testified, it's Colonel Moolman. By then it was
the captain, isn't she?
Yes. By then she was a captain. Now she's been promoted.
I see. Question is, who gave the instruction, though, for the cordon and search authorization to be sought and the relevant documents to be drawn up? Did you give that instruction, or did Brigadier Collins, or somebody else?
okokuba makwenziwe isicelo esinjengalesi application enjengaleyo.
Chairperson, I did say that it's myself.
Nditshilo ndiyimendele senzo sicelo.
And when you instructed that be prepared, what was your understanding of the intelligence that was available to prepare that application?
Xa wenza upha lo myalelo kokuba makwenziwe eso sicelo ubusunolwazi okokuba yintoni ulwazi abanalo ingxelo abanayo ezomntola.
Chairperson, may the question be repeated, because if my mind serves me well, I did answer this question.
Maphinda lo mbuzo andazi noba ndike ndawuphendula nalo mbuzo.
Perhaps I could ask the same question with a different angle with more detail.
Mandobuze ngenye indlela.
The coordinate search application related to the Inkaneng informal settlement, you remember? That was one of the areas in respect of which the authorization granted by the Provincial Commissioner provided for that area to be cordoned off and then to be searched. That's correct, isn't it?
It's correct, Chairperson, including the hostels.
Yes.
Andithi indawo yayiyawusesha
Well,
phaya.
let's leave hostels out of it for the moment. Let's just concentrate on Inkaneng informal settlement.
Mandithi masithethe ngeNkaneng.
Was there information that if you go to a specific shack in the informal settlement, you will find weapons? So was the plan to put a cordon around that shack for people to go in and search it? Or was there just going to be a general search through the whole of the informal settlement with the area cordoned off outside, as it were, by members of the service? How is the cordon search going to be executed?
Okokuba kuyawuvalwa yonke kuyahanqa yonke iNkaneng ikanene mhlawumbe amatyotyombe athize phayeni apho kuqoqelwa khona ukuba kukho ezi zixhobo ziyawufunyana khona.
Chairperson, as I already indicated, that we did not know precisely the place, otherwise we could have applied for a search warrant. For the fact that we did not know which specific shack or what, that's why we cordoned off the place.
Into ke yenza okokuba senze isicelo sokuba sihanqe yonke le ndawo ukuba sesingenalwazi sinenangqele phela ukuba kukweliphi neliphi ityotyombe. Xa besazi ityotyombe besizawucela i-search warrant yokuba siyosetsha loo ndlu.
Does that mean that you did not know in which particular shacks in Inkaneng weapons could be found?
Amanye amazwi uthi beninganalo ulwazi
In other words, your information, the intelligence you'd received, which takes us back to Ms. LaRue's question, wasn't specific enough to enable you to target particular houses. So you had to go through the whole settlement looking for arms. Is that what you say?
That's what I testified about, Chairperson.
Ewe bendixela loo nto mhlekazi ukuba besingenalwazi lokokuba sizawuya kweliphi noma kweliphi ityotyombe yiko nje sacela okokuba kuhanqwe yonke le nto sisetsha onke.
General Mpembe, I may have misunderstood your earlier testimony then, because I understood you to have testified that from the people that were arrested on the 13th, you obtained intelligence. You obtained some of that specific information that then fed into the application to search and corner. Have I misunderstood your earlier evidence?
I think the evidence, Ms. LaRue, was that there was information obtained from people who were also arrested before the 13th as well.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Kuye kwaba kumnqino ukuba kuye kwafunyana intetho ingxelo ethize kubantu ababanjwa abanye phambi ngomhla ka-13.
General Mpembe, do you have the question? The question is it correct that intelligence received from people arrested on the 13th and earlier fed into the application to search and corner? Did you get intelligence from arrested persons that helped you do the application for search and corner?
Ndinyanisile xa ndithi kwingxelo fumana kwaba bantu ababanjwa phambi ngomhla ka-13 nangomhla ka-13 nafumana ingxelo okuye kwathi ngayo nenza esi sicelo sokuba makuhanqwe laa ndawo iyoseshwa.
Chairperson, I'm requesting that as it has been extensively deliberated in this commission, you remember the commission will recall that about how many times...
I know that. Imagine with a simple question which the answer is either yes or no. I'm not going to allow undue repetition. All you've been asked is, in respect of the people who were arrested before the 13th and on the 13th, did you not say that you'd received information which enabled you to identify where certain weapons and so on could be found. And if you went with a coordinate search operation, you'd find them there, or hope to find them. That's the simple question, either yes or no.
Andinawuvuma general ukuba babuze imibuzo oke wabuzwa kuyo kodwa ke lo ulula lona umbuzo ukuthi kwingxelo enayifumana kwaba bantu babanjwa phambi kwe-13 nange-13 inyaniso na okokuba kukho ingxelo ethize nayifumana enenenzako okokuba hayi ngale ngxelo lena masicele okokuba kuyoseshwa phaya kunokuba ezixhobo ziyawufunyanwa phaya kula matyotyombe.
The coordinate search, Chairperson, that was done in September, the answer will be yes.
You're being asked about the coordinate search application, which was brought and in respect to which authorization was obtained from the Provincial Commissioner for I think there was one, it was for the period from the 15th to 16th of August. I think that's what Advocate LaRue is asking you about. August,
Advocate
not September. And the answer is either yes or no. You either had some specific information or you didn't.
Buza ngale ye-15-16 i-coordinate search indawo kwakuyoseshwa kuyo hayi le kaSeptember ugeneral athi uthetha ngayo uba apho babefumene ingxelo.
Chairperson, that's why I was asking that the question should be specific. Which coordinate search?
Not specific. So
Yes.
what's your answer?
Yes.
Ubuzwa ke ngokuba
So that my answer should be specific. Or is that her question of the one?
It was not her question, it's my question. In respect of the coordinate search application, for which an authorization was sought, which I think it covers the period the 15th to the 16th of August, was that application based, to some extent at least, on specific information which had been obtained from persons who'd been arrested earlier, which identified, it was hoped with some degree of precision, where arms and so forth could be found. The answer is either yes or no. You know?
It's no, Chairperson, for that one, but for September, yes.
mandithi ke ubuza umgcini sihlalo kokuba xa kuzokwenziwa isicelo sokuba kuyosetshwa laa ndawo phakathi komhla 15 no-16 nanifumene ingxelo na kwaba bantu babebanjiwe uthi hayi ngaloo mini leyo ngxelo yasetyenziswa kulaa
I
session
think that
ngeSeptember.
this is perhaps a suitable stage. We started at 9:10, I think. So it's a suitable stage for us to take the tea German, which I hope will only be 15 minutes.
Make sithi ke 15 minutes bethi ixesha letiye kancinci nje. Commission commences.
Commission resumes. Major General, you're still under oath.
General.
Major General, continuing in the theme of the paper trail, as the Chair has called it, I'm correct that the only documents relating to the plan, which is Exhibit SS3, that is not a contemporaneous document because it was reverse engineered, in the words of its author. You don't know of any other planning documents from that period of time that could be provided to the Commission?
Akukho olunye uxwebhu olumaqondana nesicwangciso esi elenziwa phambi kwesi siye sasetshenziswa.
Contemporaneous means those that were made on that day. Chairperson, if I may get it correct.
Ndiva kakuhle okokuba xa uthi eyenziwa ngaloo mini.
General Mpembe, let me ask the question by breaking it down into 4 specific types of documents that we would have wanted to see. The first is that there is no contemporaneous operational plan document. There isn't an SS3 that was prepared at the time, correct?
Manditsho okokuba akukho phepha onalo ngoku uxwebhu olunalo ongalibonisa licebo elenziwa ngaloo mini.
Chairperson, we submitted a contingency plan of the 10th, and we submitted then a contingency plan of the 13th, and thereafter the planning was also done on the daily basis.
Siye sanikeza icebo elalibhalwe phansi kwizinto ezizokwenziwa ngomhla ka-13 kuthemba koko ke zazenziwa kuya ngemeko ngokutshintsha kwemeko ngelo
The question Ms. LaRue is asking you isn't when the planning was done. She wants to know if there are any documents which are what she calls contemporaneous. Now, as I understand you to say, there are documents for the 10th and up to the 13th. Is that correct? Which
Correct, Chairperson.
are those documents that were prepared at the time?
kukho amaxwebhu akhona akusuka nge-10 kude kube ngomhla ka-13.
Whereas I understand that some of the other documents were what Lieutenant Colonel Scott called reverse engineered. They were prepared in document form after the event in order to reflect what his evidence was the plan at the time. In other words, there wasn't a plan that was documented from the 13th onwards, if I understand him correctly, but that he prepared documents after the 16th to reflect what the non-documented plans were up to that stage. I think that's an accurate summary of what he says. Is that also your understanding?
Enye ke into abuza ngayo kokuba la eyabhala nguLieutenant Scott emva kokuba seyenzekile lento echaza izehlakalo ukuba bezenzeka ngolu hlobo.
Chairperson, we testified that Lieutenant Colonel Scott now, and by then Lieutenant Colonel, and Colonel Merafe did prepare the plan. And this re-engineering and engineering, yes, it was the correction thereafter, but the plan was there. On the 13th, and I did mention that it was after the interception. So there were plans, not plans done after.
Major General, I don't think you're understanding the question you're being asked. I understand that your evidence is that those plans were in existence beforehand. But what you're being asked is whether they were in existence in documented form beforehand. I think have you got SS2? In the... Yes. In relation, if you look at SS2,
umbuzo kokuba siyazi kokuba
SS3, sorry, is it SS3?
isicwangciso kodwa ubuzwa kokuba zazibhalwe phansi naphambi kokuba ahlale phansi uKenneth Scott.
SS2, of course, is the standing order. I think it's SS3. There it says, have you got it? It's not in this one. Yeah, no. It starts at the 10th and runs all the way through. Is 3 in front of you?
Correct, Chairperson.
Now, my recollection is that somewhere in that document it is stated that the some at least of the pages were not in existence in documentary form beforehand, but they were produced by way of reconstruction afterwards. Is that correct?
Asiva kakuhle ukuba li exhibit SS3 bekuzizicwangciso bezikho zisetyenziswa kodwa ke zingabhalwanga zibhalwe ngolu hlobo emva kokuba seyenzekile lento kuyinkcazelo yezinto ebekade zenzeka.
SS3 begins with the contingency plan to which you referred, which is dated the 10th of August. But if one goes on, then there's a document headed Operation Platinum, London Mine, Marikana, 14 August. And then if one, and there's 13 before that, and then there's London Mine, Marikana, 14 August, stage 1. And then there's a document for the 15th and a document for the 16th. Now, my understanding is that Colonel Scott very fairly concedes that these documents did not exist. In fact, that is so. If you look at the document Operation Platinum, London Mine, Marikana, 16 August 2012, stage 2. If you look at that document, it's got a number of pages. And at page 10, it says the following. The tasking tables to follow were compiled for the commission briefing, were not displayed visually at the JOC briefing on the 16th August 2012. This was because they could not be fully completed due to the lack of immediate knowledge with regard to force levels and resources available on the day, and he goes on about that. And so what he is effectively saying is that these documents were compiled afterwards, but they were reconstructed, as it were, by a process of what's been described as reverse engineering. Now, that's what Mr. Leroux is asking you about.
No, Chair, with respect, that's not my understanding.
Sorry, just to make it clear, I was talking to you about the plan for the 16th. I think it's clear that the documents from the 10th to the 13th were what Mr. Leroux describes as contemporaneous documents. I think they're duly signed and everything. The question really relates to the 16th. The tables, for example, which we see, were not in existence at the time for the reasons mentioned, I assume, by Lieutenant Colonel Scott, as he then was. Now, do I understand it correctly?
Ndiva kakuhle na ukuba le yange 16 kakhulu into ebhalwe nguKenneth Scott emva kokuba isenzekile lento ngaphandle kwalezi ezingaphambilini ezenzeka ngelo xesha zabhalwa phansi.
Chairperson, as you put it and when you specify even the dates, I agree that certain pages, but not all the plan.
No, quite. I mean, obviously, the 10th, for example, is a contemporaneous. It looks like a contemporaneous document, and I think that applies to the 13th as well.
Apho mhlekazi kusho ugeneral uthi umngenisihlalo ewe ndithetha nje ngalenya hayi le 10 nange 13.
You see, what I was reading to was from page 10 of this document headed Operation Platinum, London Mine, Marikana, 16 August, stage 2. And at page 10, in the third paragraph, it says, the tasking and setting out of the teams for the day remained as depicted in the tables. It was done during the operational briefing that morning once force levels and resources were confirmed. So, but in the first paragraph, he says the tasking tables to follow were compiled for the commission briefing, were not displayed visually at the doc briefing. So those documents didn't exist in document form on the 16th. They were compiled for the commission. But Lieutenant Colonel Scott alleges that they set out what the plan was at the time. Am I understanding the situation correctly?
Yes, Chairperson, as the Chairperson correctly indicated, but not all the plan was not there. Only certain documents in the plan.
Uthi ke njengoba usitsho nje ewe kunjalo mhlekazi kodwa ke bekungekho onke lamaxwebhu abekwe la njengoba usitsho.
And General Mpembe, just so that we're absolutely clear on the detail, which documents do you say in SS 3 are the contemporaneous documents? We know the ones for the 10th and the 13th that have a signature. Are you saying everything thereafter you accept is not contemporaneous? It was prepared by General Scott for the Commission after the events.
Ikuva kakuhle kokuba uthi ngaphandle kwalawa sayiniwe enziwe ngelo xesha onke lawa amanye uScott wawenza enza amalungiselelo ali commission emva kokuba kwesehlakalo.
Chairperson, as it has been indicated to all the other dates, the one of the 16 in particular, those pages that have been pointed out, those are the documentation that were made for the commission. They were not presented there at the JOCOM, but the rest were there.
Mr. Rue, I think if we use the phrases before the event and after the event, the witness will understand. Now, what counsel wants to know from you is, apart from those documents that we're looking at now, were there any other documents which didn't exist before the event, but which were compiled or produced in documentary form after the event? Is that your question?
Yes.
Mbuzo ke ucacisiwe ngokuba kubuzwa ngamaxwebhu abhalwe emva kwesehlakalo apho kusekulungisela khona iCommission.
It is correct, Chairperson, the one in SS3, that page 10. There is also the briefing that was done by Colonel Scott at 13:30.
Thank you.
Ewe kunjalo ngaphandle kwale eyenziwa nguLieutenant Scott phaya kwingxelo le eyenziwa ngo-13:30.
General Mpembe, I'm still not absolutely clear. I just want to try again. In SS3, the first document relates to the 10th. The next document relates to the 13th. Then there's a document that starts Operation Platinum, Lonman Mine, Marikana, 14 August 2012. Am I correct that from that page onwards, the rest of SS3 is what Scott reverse engineered? That's correct. That's your understanding, correct?
Kunjalo
Chairperson.
uvumelana nami.
Well, before he answers, I know he used the word reverse engineered, but that's a bit misleading. I think if you put it in the form of finally reduced to a document, produced as in documentary form, I think the witness will understand. Because reverse engineering may or may not involve other concepts which we're not busy with at the moment.
Uthi into ekufanele ayicacise okokuba uthetha okokuba ezi zinto zabhalwa zabekwa ngolu hlobo emva kwesi sehlakalo ngoba ezinye zazo zaziyingxenye yesicwangciso phambi kokuba kwenzeke esehlakalo.
Let me ask the question crisply. The documents relating to the plan for the 14th, that was the Tuesday, did those documents, as far as you are aware, exist on the 14th? Or were they produced in documentary form after the 14th?
Umbuzo yilowo kokuba kwizicwangciso zenge-14 izinto ezizokwenzeka iyabhalwa phansi ngalowo mini noma iyabhalwa phansi leyo nto ukucacisa ezinto emva kokuba seyenzekele.
Chairperson, relating to the specific one that you were saying, when it's presented in the JOCOM, my understanding is that it's documented. And then I did testify that we will deliberate on it and that in the JOCOM. And then the rectification will thereafter be made to those documents.
Mandithi xa kuyinto eyathethwa kuJOCOM ndicinga uba iyabhalwa phansi kuthe ke emva koko yabe seyilungiswa.
General Mpembe, in light of that answer, what was presented in documentary form to the JOCOM as the plan for the 14th?
Umbuzo kokuba kwathethwa ntoni isicwangciso sasithini kwiJOCOM phaya ngezinto ezokwenzeka nge-14.
Chair, how many times must the witness answer this question? It's been asked so many times I've lost count.
Umhlekazi ungalwana uthi hayi nyoko kukaninzi uphendula lo mbuzo sadinga uphambi kwesingaki futhi.
These matters were covered with General Annandale. If the witness, let's just talking. Do you say the documents for the 14th were there on the 14th in documentary form?
Uthi izinto ezazenzeka nge-14 zazibhalwe phansi ngayo lo mini.
Correct, Chairperson, in the sense that Colonel Scott, Colonel Mirafe, and other officers, which Colonel Scott do confirm in his statement, they will be tasked beforehand to compile a plan. And that plan will be deliberated by different commission officers in the JOCOM. And immediately when he presented in a slideshow in the JOCOM, my understanding is that it's in a documentary form. And then I did also testify that immediately after we deliberated it, then the changes will also be infiltrated in the plan in a documentary form.
So, do I understand? The trouble with the word document is, I suppose, ambiguous. If one looks for a piece of paper, one may not be successful. But I take it what you're saying is, if I'm misunderstanding you, you must correct me. But on Colonel Scott's computer, there was a document in quotation marks, which he showed through a PowerPoint, I suppose, to the people in the JOCOM. Is that right? This was discussed. If there were changes, he then effected them on his computer so that they were now on the electronic document on the screen of his computer. Is that so?
Correct, Chairperson.
Now, that's what Mr. Roux wants. He's got the answer. If, on the other hand, she wants to know whether it was then printed in paper, on paper, and there was a paper document, a hard copy, in other words, available on the 14th, what's the answer to that? You understand the difference? You have an electronic document on the computer, but occasionally you press the print button and you produce a hard copy. Now, were there hard copies of these documents available on the 14th and the 15th, or was it simply an electronic document on the Colonel's computer? You understand the question?
I understand it, Chairperson.
Uva kakuhle umbuzo ngokugeneral. Umbuzo ukuthi xa kuthethwa apha ngento ebhalwe phansi, akuthethwa ngale evezwe kwikhompyutha. Iyavela kwikhompyutha njengoba bebonisa uColonel Scott bakwenzeke okulungiswe apho. Ubuzo kokuba emva koko kwenziwa na kwacofiwa ikhiphe iphepha apho ibhalwe khona lento.
Major General Mpembe, the Standing Order 262 requires you, as the overall commander, to submit an operational plan to the Area Commissioner for approval, correct?
Andithi standing order sibeka ngolo hlobo kokuba isicwangciso kufanele sivele kuwe usinikeze kwi-area commissioner ezawuvumelana naloo ndlela kuba kusetshenzwe ngayo.
Chairperson, maybe I will request, or maybe should say, the cluster commander in terms of the current structure. And by that time, I was a deputy provincial commissioner, and then I will submit it to the provincial commissioner.
Ngelo xesha ndandiyi-deputy commissioner bendizayinikeza kulo ongaphezulu kwam obizwa ngokuba yi-cluster commander.
And as the provincial commissioner was not there, then I could, and I did testify that then it was taken upon myself to approve the plan because I was conversant with what was happening.
Ngoba iCommissioner yephondo bingekho ke yayisemagxeni ami kokuba kube ndim endivumelana nalawo.
And General Mpembe, the signatures that appear in SS3 with respect to the plan for the 10th and the 13th, that's the process that they reflect, correct? They've been submitted for approval and approved. Is that correct?
Andithi njengoba zibhaliwe apha ke zasayinwa kubonisa okokuba kwavunyelwana ngazo.
With respect of the 10th, it was approved by the acting cluster commander, Brigadier Sebuluki.
Yavunywa ngowayephethe ngelo xesha Lieutenant Cluster Commander obengubrigadier ngelo xesha uSibuluki.
With regard to the one of the 13th, and the one of the 13th, we should understand that the others that were made by Colonel Scott also, they are the annexures to this one. It was approved by myself.
Kwezi ke zange-13 ezazibhale uKenela uScott ezinye zaye zafakwa emva koko apha ezo ke zavunywa ndim.
So with respect to the operation for the 14, 15, 16 period, was anything written submitted for approval that you're aware of?
Kwimini ezilandelayo ke kukho into eyibhaliwe njengale
Sorry,
eyazisa
does the
ukuba
question relate to hard
ivunywe.
copies, or does it include electronic documents on a computer?
Chair, it would be either one. It's the process that was followed for the 10th and the 13th. Did that process occur again with respect to the plan for 14, 15, 16 August?
Umbuzo wami njengoba kwenzeka nge-10 nange-13 njengale ndlela ibekwe apha ndibuza okokuba ngemini elandelayo ukuthi kube usetshenzwe ngayo le ndlela na.
Correct, Chairperson, after the deliberation electronically.
Ewe emva kokuba ivezwe phaya kunomathotholo kwi-screen.
And after it has been discussed thoroughly by different role players of the JOCOM.
Emva kokuba ke seyike yajongwa ngamaqela ohlukile abehlangene phaya kwi-JOCOM avunyelana ngayo.
And when all of us, we agree with that, and that could be approved by myself.
Sesivumile ke sisonke okokuba hayi kuyawuba yiyo iplan eyawusetshenziswa.
Is it a prerequisite that the plan be printed out and be signed as a token of approval, or does it suffice that it is approved in the meeting and the briefing?
Kunyanzelekile na kokuba iplan leyo isayine phansi noma niyavumelana ngayo isephaya kwi-screen.
Chairperson, the answer in the case of a gathering that was a notice was served, the answer will be yes. In the case of a spontaneous gathering or a fluidity of the case, the answer will be yes after the JOCOM has discussed it thoroughly and every role player understands it, what it's supposed to do at that time, because it was changing from time to time.
Uthi ezi zinto ziyazenza ke ngendlela ezohlukile xa kukho inhlanganiso ejongene nento engxamisileyo kuvunyelana ngayo apho kwezinye ke apho kuhlangene khona amaqela amaninzi kuthethwe gqitha ngaloo nto emva kokuba sekwenziwe isivumelwano esiphelele ke ibese iba icebo elamkelekileyo.
Major General Mpembe, where will we find that approval? Where do we see that approval recorded for the 14, 15, 16 days of the operation?
Ngoku sizawubona phi ke okokuba kwavunyelwana ngalento kwizinsuku ezi ze-14, 15 nange-16.
Chairperson, I said that there were the annexures to the one of the 13th. I was always present, and after the JOCOM has been discussed, the plan, and it will be approved, and as I've indicated, electronically.
Zezi endithi ke emva kwezi zange-13 eziye zafakwa apho zongezwa.
And General Mpembe, for the record, the annexures you refer to, those are the Google Earth images that had been used for the planning, correct?
ezuthetha ngazo ezazibonakaliswa phaya kumfanekiso iGoogle.
Chairperson, it is written operational plan from the 14th, and then it will also indicate the date. Sometimes it will indicate the stage.
Ngoba ibhaliwe apha iyakhombisa ukuba i-operational plan yangeyiphi imini nokuthi xa kwenzeka ntoni.
And then that is what I refer to, then it becomes an annexure to the one that I approved, because the situation was changing from time to time.
Njengoba ndisho kokuba lezi ke zafakwa njengezongezo kwezi sendithethe ngazo zange-13 ngoba imeko yayiya ngokuguquguquka.
And when changes are made to the plan because of that changing situation, would you approve each of those changes?
Akukho inguquko ezibakhoya ke ezibakhona kwisicwangciso ezibangelwa ukuguquka kwemeko kuye kubekho into ebhaliwe ngalonto.
Chairperson, it depends whether it was discussed in the JOCOM where I was present, but I did indicate to this commission that Major General Enende, if it becomes operationally at that time through the radio, those changes, and when I'm there, he could approve them.
I think this was covered when Major General Annandale gave evidence.
Kuzawuvela oku kubungqina buka General Anandale.
And this witness has also been asked about these matters earlier. So,
Elingqina like labuzwa ngalento
if there's something
phambili.
new you want to get on record, carry on. But I'm afraid at the moment it sounds to me as if you're simply getting repetitions of earlier answers.
Mr.
Into
Rui,
ke
it was
ecacayo
particularly-
kokuba
sorry.
kuyaphindwa-phindwa.
It was particularly covered in the cross-examination relating to the minutes of the meetings, where the plans were presented and there was any dissension. This line of cross-examination was covered with both General Annandale and the...
Iyavela lento xa kujongwa kwezi minutes kubo bobabini uGeneral Anandale nelingqina yeyaba khona lonto yaphendula.
Thank you, Chair. I'll move on. Major General Mpembe, with respect to any written plans or electronic plans for the different section commanders, do you know whether those were prepared and where they are?
Uyazi na kokuba i-commander ezo zohlukehlukile ezabo iplan babezicwangcisa ziphi zikhona na?
Chairperson, what I know is that they need to submit to me and to confirm with me that the members have been debriefed, and they need also just to confirm with me. But with those plans or whatever that they do have is their roles. They will have to deal with that with their commanders.
Kwakungumsebenzi wawunikezwe kubo lo ukuba bawenze njengekomanda ke kodwa kwakufanele okokuba bazizise kum ndizijonge ndivumelane nazo.
But I can say now that that can be answered by each commander.
Into endingayitsho ke ngoko kokuba nenye ikomanda eyayiphethe iqela elithise yiyo ezokwazi ukuyiphendula loo nto undibuza yona ngoku.
As I've indicated, that my role was to brief the commanders through during the JOCOM, and precisely the presentation was done to them, and they will confirm to me in terms of that members have been briefed in accordance with the briefing that has taken place in the JOCOM.
Mna into efanele yenze uba ndithethe ndinikeze ingxelo kwiikomanda ezi phaya kwi-JOCOM bona ke beze ukuba bandixelele ukuba hayi base babaxelele aba baphantsi kwabo ngezo zigqibo.
Did you instruct all commanders or section leaders to furnish detailed written plans on their specific tasks, which is the obligation placed on you in terms of the standing order?
Njengoba i-standing order sibeka kuwe okokuba ifanele ivele kuwe loo nto wawubaxelela okokuba yonke into abayenzayo izicwangciso ziziswe kuwe zibhaliwe.
I'm
Sorry,
Mr.
General.
Rui, will you repeat that question? I'm sorry, I didn't quite follow you.
Makaphinde lo mbuzo ke umama uvakali kakuhle.
Let me try it again. Major General Mpembe, if you turn to section 10 of SS2, the standing order, it's page 7, and specifically 10.2c, says that the operational commander, I know that that wasn't you, must instruct all commanders or section leaders to furnish detailed written plans on their specific tasks. Do you know if that was done?
Buzo ukuba njengoba sitsho i-standing order apha sibeka yenzeka nalento njengoba ibekiwe apha.
As the instruction was given,
Yakhusha leyo myalelo ewe.
as I have said to me, they will indicate, they will confirm with me that is done.
Njengoba nditshilo ukuba bazawuphinda beze kum bazondixela ukuba hayi seyenzekile.
But as the standing order specified, all commanders or section commanders can testify to that effect.
Njengoba sitsho i-standing order nazo ke ezi commanders zinakwazi ukuba zinikeze obo bunqe.
Major General Mpembe, you say that you know that the instruction was given. How do you know that?
Wazi kanjani ke ukuba yanikezwa leyo myalelo general?
Advocate during, Chairperson, I'm sorry, during the JOCOM meeting.
Njengoba ndisitsho ke mhlekazi mgcini sihlalo phaya kwinkangantso zeJOCOM apho bivela khona lento.
Commanders will always be reminded of all the roles and responsibilities that they will have to do.
Apho ke commanders yakhunjuzwa ixesha nexesha kuyo yonke into ebafanele ukuba bayenze.
In respect of the operations, starting from the briefing of the members, the equipments and so on.
Ngalo msebenzi ekufanele bawenze kuqala ngokuxelela amalunga abo ukuba kufanele kwenzeke ntoni nezixhobo ekufanele baziphathe.
And have you seen any of these detailed written plans by any of the commanders or section leaders? Have you seen them?
Uke wazibona ke ezo zinto zibhaliwe zezi commander ezazisebenza phansi kwakho?
Due to the changing environment and the enormous responsibilities that I had, because I had also to do a lot of responsibilities on those days, I could not see them.
Andizibonanga ke mhlekazi ngenxa yokuba ndandi
There's something I don't understand.
neminye imisebenzi
I'm not
emininzi.
sure whether I was asking you or the witness. I suppose ultimately the witness. But I can understand where there's a crowd management situation and there are various sections and each section leader is told he must say what he's going to do and produce a written plan on what he proposes to do, or she. But where you have a general operation which is planned at the top, as it were, or near the top, and the planner at the top has worked out what each section is going to do, I wouldn't have thought, I know what 10.2c says, but I wouldn't have thought from a practical point of view, the individual section commander, the task of whose section has been worked out at the top, is obliged then to produce a detailed written plan setting out the tasks going to be performed by his section. This is a situation where, as far as we see, there was a general plan from the top or near the top with a fair degree of detail. So I would have thought that 10.2c has to be adapted slightly to cater for that situation. But let's see if the witness understands what I said and agrees or disagrees. Do you understand the point I'm making, Major General?
Uyavumelana lento ndiyithethayo general?
Perfectly correct, Chairperson.
Vumelana nawe mhlekazi njengoba esitsho umhlekazi okokuba apha kwakumsebenzi omkhulu kukho iikomanda ezininzi ezohlukahlukile njengoba sitsho i-standing order apha andibona okokuba ibingenzeka lento njengoba ibekile apha ngoba lento ibithethwe phezulu yehliswa okokuba iye kwababa phansi.
Am I correct in thinking that if Colonel Scott with his computer and a PowerPoint presentation has presented the plan detailing what each section has to do, it's not necessary then for the individual section commanders or leaders to in turn furnish detailed written plans on what the task of their sections are. Is that correct?
Kunjalo njengoba uScott ubeyibekile lento kwicomputer yakhe eyibekile okokuba le section zokwenza oku noku kwakungekho kubekho sidingo ke sokuthi nomnye wezo section abhale lento ebesibhaliwe ayizise kuwe.
The Chairperson, you are correct in the sense that that section should understand the role and response that has been allocated to them, and they should drill it and understand it in when how they are going to execute it.
Ndivumela nawe mhlekazi ngoba isizathu ke sayo yonke lento kwakwenzela okokuba elonelo qela lazi kakuhle ukuba umsebenzi ufanele kwenza ngomphi nomphi.
And thereafter the commander will have to confirm with the JOCOM commander. In most cases they will confirm with Major General Allendale because I might not be there. But during the debriefing, during the night in the JOCOM, I will also come to understand that.
Uthi ke nenye commander izokwenza ingxelo yayo kulo Scott. Kuthi ke kwinhlanganiso kusihlwa phaya kwiJOCOM ivezwe ke ngokugcwele le ngxelo apho nami ndizawuba khona.
General, there was evidence that some of the plan, the diagrams in particular, there were copies handed down to be used in the briefing of the members. Now, what is expected of a commander? What is he supposed to report back? On what plan?
Njengoba kwakukhushwa ikopi zalezinto neplan nefoto zinikeze ikomando kuba bayothi baziphathe xa bethetha nabantu babo. Yintoni bekufanele bayibuyise kuwe ngoku?
Chairperson, is to say the role and that responsibility which has been allocated. The members who are going to execute it, they do understand it perfectly well, how they are going to execute it, and they do have the resources to execute those role and responsibilities.
Into bebafanele ukuyenza nje ukuze baxela uba aba bantu abasebenza phansi kwabo bayayivisisa yonke lento banazo nezinto ezifanele izixhobo ezifanele kokuba bachube lo umsebenzi ngemfanele.
That is what the commander has to report back. That
Phela
has
nje
been
kwento
done.
ikomanda bekufanele ize kum izokundixela uba hayi bayivile banazo izixhobo ezifanele.
And how would he do this in the middle of an operation? Would there be documents filed? Would he just report back orally? What is the procedure?
Bazoyenza kanjani ke le ngxelo ngoba isenzeka lento bezawubhala phansi ezi zinto ikanene kanti bezozithatha njengemlomo kuwe.
After the JOCOM meeting, the commanders will go out and hold parades with each section with their members.
Emva kwenhlanganiso yeJOCOM omnye nomnye ke ophethe icala ubeza uphuma aye kwabo bantu abaphansi kwakhe athethe nabo.
Brief them and drill them with them what has been discussed in the JOCOM, specifically these roles and responsibilities.
Okokuba kwenziwe kuthethwe kwanziwani phaya kwiJOCOM izigqibo ezithethwe zeziphi.
Check whether members are fit and they complete subs 15 that is called commander's report.
Baqalise ke ne-subs 15 ezikhombisa okokuba abo bantu bawulungele lo msebenzi abanikezwa wona.
Inspect the commanders whether mentally and physically fit to perform the job.
Ikomanda ke zibajonge ababantu okokuba baphilile na kwasemoyeni nase ngokomphefumulo okokuba banokwenza lo msebenzi banikezwa wona.
Indicate with each member with the corresponding figures the name of the member on the first part of the subs 15 and then at the back in terms of all the equipments that the member is supposed to have and the member should sign.
Incwadi isubs 15 eliphepha ke libhala igama lalo muntu nazo zonke ezinye izinto aziphethe uthi ngapha ngasemva kubhale zonke izixhobo zomsebenzi abanikezwe zona.
The signature of the member indicates the acceptance of the equipments, the understanding of the briefing, and the signature of the commander means that everything has been complied with.
Apha ke iyasayina ilunga nelunga liyasayina ekusayineni kwalo phaya lisho kokuba livile lento ethethayo liyavumelana nayo. Ukomanda xa esayina phaya uthi ke yena ubaxelele aba bantu bayayivisisa le.
And the commander will go back to the JOC.
Bese buya kukomanda phinde apha kwiJOC.
Then the entry will be effected in the FF25 to that effect.
Bese ke kuthi leyo ngxelo eza nayo ke ibese ibhalwa phansi kwincwadi yayibiza ngokuba iFF25.
Major General Mpembe, taking you back to your answer that you heard the instruction to comply with 10.2c of the standing order, that you heard the instruction that commanders and section leaders must furnish detailed written plans. I just want to understand your evidence now. Are you saying that the section commanders used bits of the Scott plan, and that by doing that they complied with 10.2c. Is that your evidence?
Chairperson, there's no such thing as a Scots plan. I think that has been established.
uyaphinda umama uthetha
Maybe a
ngento
debate
ebizwa
about
ngokuba
that,
Scots
Mr. Rue. I
plan.
think for the sake of avoiding unnecessary argument at this stage, find another terminology, because the police say that it wasn't Colonel Scott's plan, and you've heard the story about the inputs of other people and so on. So let's not go there now. That's just a diversion for the moment. You're busy actually with something else.
Masithi ke masisuke kulento yokuba siyibize ngeScots plan ngoba kuyavela lengxelo kokuba aba SAPS bayithi akuyona iplan kaScots plan mayingabizwa ngolo hlobo.
Thank you, Chair. I'll abandon the shorthand. General Mpembe, do I understand your evidence correctly that you heard the instruction be given that 10.2c must happen, that commanders must prepare their written detailed plans, but that by using the plan that was presented to the JOCCOM, that had been complied with? Is that your evidence?
Utsho kanjalo kokuba xa kuphumele plan njengoba uchazile kokuba yenziwe phaya kwiJOCOM isuke isiphelele lento iyahambelana nokuba kubeka umgaqo apha standing order 26210C.
What I'm saying is that to comply with briefing of members, that's 10C. It's a briefing of members.
Ndithi apha ku10C ithetha ngento ekufanele ixelele ingxelo ekufanele inikezwe kumalunga ayokwenza umsebenzi.
There are two situations.
Kubakho izinto ezimbini ke zohlukile apha.
Whereby there is a gathering where a notice has been served.
Kuhlukile xa kukho isaziso esiye sakhutshwa sokokuba kuzoba khona oloqhankqalazo.
Then the compliance of 10C will differ from the one that is a spontaneous gathering as it was in Marikana.
Apho ke kuzobakho umahluko kwinkcazelo ezawuvela phansi kuka10C xa kuqhankqalazo oluwenziwe ngesicelo kunento eyenzeke njengale yaseMarikana eyenzeke kungekho sicelo.
Practically speaking,
isebenza ngolo hlobo.
we will say POP will disperse the crowd.
Okwesichelo ke sizawuthi abo bantu bazawusasazwa ngamapolisa ePOP,
taking into account the intelligence that was given in the JOCOM.
kuzawuya ke oku ngengxelo yezobuntlola eyavela phaya kwiJOCOM.
Where experienced members of different sections of the POP will be present.
Apho kuzobe kukhona amalunga anamava asebenza phansi kombutho wePOP.
Their role and responsibilities will be specified and debated.
Apho ke kuzawubakho ingxelo ebanjwa kokuba bazokwenza ntoni nantoni.
Then there will be a discussion with regard to the role and responsibilities of the STF.
Kuzabe sekubakho ingxelo ezawuvela ke xa kuzawusetshenziswa apha be-special task force.
And in that respect, that will also be done, the same as a POP in terms of the roles and responsibilities and the allocation of resources.
Lapho ke kuzawubakho inkcazelo ezawuvela njengoba sendichazile enikezwa aba be-POP.
It will be like that, Chairperson, with regard to all the other units, and then it will,
Kwenzeka ngolo hlobo ke Mhlekazi nakweliphi icela elizawusetshenziswa apho.
then it will be expected of commanders, in terms of those roles and responsibilities, brief the members in terms of 10C.
Kulindelwe ke okuba ezokomanda eziyobe zikhona xa kwenzelwe ingxelo kube zizo ezizawugqithisela le milayezo lena kumalunga abo njengoba ebeka apha u10C.
Making the members understand almost a similar process that took place in the JOCOM will happen.
Ukuze amalunga lawa azokwenza umsebenzi ayiqondisise kakuhle lento njengoba ibithethwa phaya kwiJOCOM.
Specifically with those platoons and sections.
Ikakhulu xa siya kweza kwamaqela iplatoon ne-sections engithethe ngazo.
And that will be also in compliance with 10C.
Yonke ke lento ihambelana nalingxelo evezwa apha ku-10C.
Sorry to interrupt this discussion. I just want to go back a little bit. You talked earlier about filling in the SAP S15 forms. Now, we've got an example before us of an SAP S15 form as Exhibit HH22, which was referred to on Friday. Now, that form doesn't tell us very much, does it? Have you got it in front of you? HH22?
Uyawathetha ngale eliphepha ikwebhu SAPS 15 unalo apho ungasibonisa khona apho lingasichazela khona ngalindlela uyiveza ngayo.
It's headed Report by Commander, and it's got particulars of the members who were involved with their personnel numbers and ranks and so forth. And then the nature of the duty is given. This particular one, all which was recorded was Marikana crowd management. And then on the following page, we have particulars of vehicles, so far as that would be relevant, and then equipment of members. And that sets out the equipment that the people had, whether the dress was in order, they had their caps, whether everything was tidy. And then if they have firearms, we have the number of the firearms and the number of rounds, the type of firearm, the number of the firearm, the number of rounds, and then the signature. So that's basically all that SAPS 15 will tell you.
I-SAPS 15 lena ichaza ngolo hlobo iveza apha amalungu
In fact, the heading of the section dealing with the task to be performed is nature of duty, changes and casualties. That's the wording on the SAPS 15. And there isn't space for very much. That would then be spelt out in detail, I take it, at the parade when the members are told specifically what's expected of them. But the SAPS 15, certainly in the case of this example, simply says Marikana crowd management, which I suppose is all there was space for on the form to record. Is that correct?
Correct, Chairperson.
iveza nje kafuphi apha kokuba le yayiphathelene neMarikana crowd management. Apha ke ngasemva ibesiveza amalungu lawo bekhona apha inqwele zazi babenikeze zona zonke izinto babenikeze zona ukuba zisesimeni esifanele na.
Chairperson, with regard to my I was explaining the process of how briefing in terms of 10C is taking place, and also going back to report to the JOC is when the commander was now saying, I did what I was expected of me after the JOCOM, and the entry in the OB to the keyword will be duty on, and he will explain, and then he will say members were inspected and briefed by me, and then he will sign.
Apho bendichaza khona mhlekazi okokuba emva kokuba sekubanjelwe intlanganiso phaya kwi-JOCOM commander iyawuya ke kwiqela lakhe afika athethe nabo kugcwaliswe le form lena banikeze zonke ezinto ezifanele kuthi emva koko xa esebuya ke ezochaza kokuba ndiyenzile le nto bekufanele ukuyenza bese kubhalwa ke kwi-OB okokuba yenza ke.
Sorry, I beg your pardon. Does that mean that the actual content of the briefing is not recorded anywhere? The details of what is expected of the members in executing the crowd management?
Amazwi ayasetshenziswa apho kuba kuthiwe kwathiwa ayinawuvela ibhaliwe loo nto kuyawuba yiyo ikomanda ezawutsho ukuba ibaxelele ukuthini nokuthini.
Chair, I think perhaps in fairness to the witness, it doesn't appear to me that he has the SAP 15 to which is reference.
Very surprised if he's never seen an SAPS 15 in his life. And I'd be very surprised, therefore, if he's disadvantaged. But in order to accommodate your concern, would you please look at an SAPS 15 and tell us whether you have difficulties in answering the questions? Would you like to see my copy of SAPS 15?
Correct, Chairperson.
I've got one.
You haven't got one of your own?
Uyiphethe ngokwi-SAPS S15 uthi umhlekazi into ayaziyo ugeneral akhona angxaki azawuba nayo.
Chair, for the record, I wasn't suggesting that the the General has never seen an SAP 15.
What were you suggesting?
I was simply saying, to answer the question that is being put to him, he must have the document to which reference is being made.
It's a good point, and he's now got the document in front of him.
Bendichaza
You
nje
already
ukuba
answered the question, but would you
akayiphathanga.
like to revise your answer in the light of
Makanikezwe yona.
the document you've now been shown?
Phambi kokuba aphendule umbuzo ndivumelana nawe apho. Uyiphethe ngoku umhlekazi general.
Chairperson, in the column of the nature of duty,
Apho ichaza khona okokuba hlobo lini lomsebenzi owenziwayo.
that's where the commander deals in detail with those members in terms of that nature of duty.
Kulapho ke ikomanda ingena nzulu kwinto ekufanele bayenze phaya nendlela ekufanele yenziwe ngayo.
He hasn't got much space for detail, has he?
Correct, Chairperson, and the members will also filter that in their pocketbooks.
Enye ke into apha kolu klubhu SAPC 15 ayikho indawo eninzi ukuba ngabhalwa yonke into. Uyawuthi xa ebaxelela ukomanda lo wabo i-members zibhale kwi-pocket books zayo ukuba baxelele ntoni nantoni.
And then the commander, it is his duty that the members are filtering it in the pocketbooks, and any other thing, the understanding of what he's supposed to do is in the pocketbook.
Ufanele ke ukuba lo komanda kube nguye obonayo okokuba bayayivisisa lento abaxelela yona nokuthi bayayibhala phaya kwizincwadi zabo ezi ekuthiwa zi-pocket book.
Mr. Liu, I'm afraid I've anticipated some of the topics you're going to deal with in your cross-examination, because you're still busy with para 4, I think, of this document that you're taking us through. And I've already gone on to para 5 to some extent. So I'm sorry if I've taken you out of the order that you prepared, but
No, it's fine, Chair, and I'm indebted to you in progressing the cross-examination. Major General Mpembe, I must just put to you why the absence of written detailed plans, whether electronic or on paper, by the section commanders is important to the South African Human Rights Commission. And that's because of what we've been told by our expert, Mr. White, who will come and testify in due course. And I need to put it to you and get your reaction to that in fairness. So my instructions in that regard are that in complex operations with multiple units playing a specialist role, it's necessary for each section commander to prepare their own individual plan, as is required by the standing order, on the basis of the overall plan. This is so as to ensure that there's complete understanding of their specialist task by each of the sections and units, and therefore he considers the failure to produce detailed plans prepared by these section commanders to be a failure and a possible explanation for the confusion that arises that we see from the statements of members, where people didn't seem to all be clear on what the overall plan was. Do you have a comment on that?
Chair, before the witness answers the question, may I just understand whether this goes to the merits or demerits of the planning? Because my objection is going to arise or not arise depending on what the answer to that is.
Chair, the question relates to the process of planning and compliance with the standing order, which anticipates that there will be a second stage of planning by each section commander, and for good reason, particularly in a complex, fluid situation such as this one. And so it goes to whether that process was followed. And since it appears that it was not followed, it seems to explain why we see the disparity of understanding arising from the statements as to what the plan was.
I think you jumped ahead of yourself, if I may say that, Mr. Liu, because you haven't yet put to the witness the statements from which it appears that there was a divergence of understanding on the part of the various members who took part. I mean, the question presupposes that, but you haven't established it yet, and so the witness is at a disadvantage in dealing with it. But that's my objection to your question. Let's see if Mr. Ngulwana's got a better one. Yes, Mr. Ngulwana?
Chair, if I could just respond to that. The decision was that given that General Mpembe is not one of the section commanders, they haven't yet testified, and that there are other witnesses that needs to be put to.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I understand that, but you put a proposition which presupposed the establishment, as it were, of certain facts. And the facts were stated very generally, namely that various members didn't understand what the plan was, and there were divergent understandings and so on. Now, I don't think it was fair to put the question in that form to this witness at this stage. Obviously, if the divergence was clear and he was asked to comment on it, that would be a different matter. But anyway, that's the answer to that point. But let's hear what Mr. Gowana's point is, if he's got one.
Well, that was precisely the one point. That was the one objection, Chair. And second,
Oh, well, that one I've upheld, yes. And
I have a second.
the other one?
Chair, I wanted to establish whether it's a criticism of the plan and the planning process. I now understand categorically that it is. This issue...
Relevant to your understanding, counsel doesn't normally have to explain to the benefit of counsel for the witness what the purpose of the question is. Sometimes a good cross-examiner conceals the purpose until it's too late for the witness to change his or her version. So I'm not sure that the relevance of the question is a factor upon which is in any event a matter of concern for us at the moment. So either it's a fair question or an unfair question. What's your objection?
Yes, that's where we should have started, Chair, with respect. Mr. Madlanga has dealt with the briefing and issue as regards the merits or demerits of the planning process. He dealt with it by referring the witness to FFF1, and he went to paragraphs 5.3.4. That dealt with the merits or demerits of the plan and the planning process, with which our learned friend is now busy pursuing. The chairperson has, at day 80, at page 8524, made this ruling, and I quote, "I certainly have no intention of allowing same points to be repeated ad nauseum with numerous witnesses. If the evidence on a particular point is given, take, for example, the plan, the alleged merits or demerits of the plan, and answers are given to the criticism, well, the criticism won't get stronger by being repeated over and over again. Our learned friend is busy pursuing the merits or demerits of the planning process, and I submit that that is an objectionable line to follow inasmuch as it has already been exhaustively dealt with. And I'd ask the chairperson to emphasize the ruling that the chairperson has made in that regard previously."
Ingxele bekade khona apha ke ihluke phaya kumama uruqa esithi kwelingqina kukho ukungavani phakathi kwaba bantu banikeza ubungqina okubonisa okokuba ingxelo eyanikezwa kubo ayenziwanga ngendlela efanele ekhutshwe apha ku10C. Uthi ke umhlekazi umngalwana kukaninzi ibuzwa lento ude wasifundela phaya apho uchairman enza khona isigqibo sokuba akunawunceda nto okokuba umbuzo osubuziwe uphinde ubuze kaninzi futhi njengoba esitsho umhlekazi ungalwana okokuba lento umhlekazi uMadlanga phambi kokuba hambe apha wayeseyibuzile yacaciswa yabekwa kamhlophe.
Chair, to the best of my knowledge and instructions, the point that the section commanders didn't furnish detailed written plans to their members of their specific role in the overall operational plan has not been put. So it is not a repetition. But perhaps I can reformulate to accommodate both that objection and, Chair, your intervention regarding the foundation. So let me withdraw the question and reformulate it. Major General Mpembe.
Mr. Chairperson, I wonder if the evidence leaders could intervene at this point, because Mr. Ngalwana's objection raises a matter of considerable importance for us, not just with this witness, but also with witnesses going forward. Mr. White is a very crucial witness in this commission. He's the witness of the Human Rights Commission. The evidence leaders have steered clear of cross-examining exhaustively on the basis of Mr. White's statement, because they've always anticipated that the Human Rights Commission will do that. He's their witness. Now, if that practice and policy is going to have to change, we need to know now, because we can't afford a situation where either with this witness or possibly in future witnesses, we deliberately leave certain questions unanswered in the expectation that the Human Rights Commission will pursue that line on the basis of Mr. White's statement, and then when the Human Rights Commission tries to do so, the SAPS object and their objection is sustained.
Nditsho ukuba ubeyichaza umhlekazi uShakalson senior counsel lento yokuba elingqina kuthiwa uWhite lingqina ebaleke gqitha elisawubizwa yi-human rights. Ngoku ngoku ke intetho ezawuvezwa nguye uWhite kungahle kube into ebalekile njengoba besitsho abo kokuba akakabizwa ngoku intetho ebekwayo mayibekwe ivakalo kokuba ithini ngoba xa ebizwa bakwazi ukubuza imibuzo efanele.
Yes. The passage from my ruling earlier related to the same point being put over and over, that was the phrase I used, over and over again to different witnesses. So you have cross-examination put to one general based on criticism of the plan, witness gives the answer, an attempt is made to ask the next general or the two generals thereafter, the same point, and the same ground is covered over and over again. That's what my question, that's what my ruling related to. Ms. Jelly asked General Annandale certain specific questions on the plan based upon Mr. White's report and criticism. Mr. Midlanga, when he cross-examined this witness, dealt with in general terms of the plan, not with the specifics of Mr. White's objection. So in the circumstances, I will allow Ms. LaRue to continue, but she must please try to keep away from points that have already been made and established, because then the points raised by Mr. Mwana are valid, and obviously we've got limited time, and we must use it profitably and not just repeating points over and over again. I hope that addresses the concerns that you raised, Mr. Shaskerson.
Thank you, Chairperson. It does. For the record, the evidence leaders are going to continue to adopt this policy of not cross-examining exhaustively on the basis of Mr. White's statement, because he is the Human Rights Commission's witness. They are able to consult with him in detail. We are not. We don't want a situation to arise in the future where what we have omitted to address cannot be addressed by the Human Rights Commission. In relation to Mr. White's statement, I emphasize it's in relation to Mr. White's statement alone.
Yonke into ebile yadilana ivela kumhlaka Shackleton nakuba sisi bobungqina ngaphambili ithetha ngento evezwa ngubungqina bukamhlekazi uWhite kokuba into ebaluleke gqitha kuzawuthi ke xa sekufika bona banali kunye lokuba babuze kodwa ke uthi umgcini sihlalo njengoba esitsho umhlekazi ungalona masiyeke lento kokuba siphinda phinde imibuzo ebekade sibuzwe ngabanye siloku sigidagida ndawonye njengoba ixesha singenalo.
Please proceed, Mr. LaRue, but bear in mind the caution that repetition is not to be encouraged.
Major General Mpembe, let me restate the question, and I have reformulated it slightly, so let me put the question now. The evidence of Mr. White will be that in complex operations involving numerous specialist units, it's necessary for section commanders to prepare their own individual detailed plans on the basis of the overall operational plan relating to the particular role that they need to play. And this is to ensure that there's complete understanding of the task by all sections and units. And Mr. White considers that the failure to prepare such plans gives rise to a significant risk of confusion arising during an operation, when individual commanders are then forced to act in terms of some unclear understanding. Could you comment on that?
Ngolo hlobo kokuba uWhite uyibeka ngalo ndlela kokuba xa kukho ioperation enjengalena kukho amaqela ohlukile kufanele bonke bazi nomnye kokuba kufanele benze ntoni nantoni ngoba xa bengavisisana kuyawuthi ekugqibeleni ikomanda ezizingazo kokuba kufanele yenze ntoni ithathe oluphuqatho ngeliphi ixesha.
Chair, in fairness to the witness, the paragraph that our learned friend is citing, perhaps he should refer the witness to. I think she's referring to paragraph 4.5.3, but perhaps she's referring to something else. But the witness needs to have the excerpt to which reference is being made.
That's correct.
Chair, this is not in Mr. White's provisional statement. This is an instruction that I've received.
Uthi ke umhlekazi ungalona mayiveze lento inikeze ugeneral akwazi ukuphendula phezukwayo uthi ayikho kwi statement sika
Are we going to get a revised final version.
Yes, Chair. As indicated in Mr. White's provisional statement,
Yes,
he only had limited
I understand.
evidence provided to him. He's busy preparing a
Yes,
final
I
statement.
understand that. Part of the problem, of course, is it's very difficult for a witness such as the present to deal with points of Mr. White that he hasn't seen before, and I just flung at him, as it were, in cross-examination. He's read the earlier report, and he can deal with that. But on the other hand, put the points slowly to him, and let's see if he feels able to deal with it. despite the
makayibheke
fact he
kancinci
hasn't-
kancinci le
hasn't
nto
known
akayibheki
it.
yonke icele kungekho nto ebhalwe phantsi ngoba iba ingxaki apha kugeneral uveza ukuba ayikabikho kwangoku statement esenesika-White.
Major General Mpembe, do you think that the failure of section commanders to prepare their own detailed plan with respect to their own specific task, which fits into a broader operational plan, do you think that the failure by section commanders to prepare their own plan would increase the risk of confusion as to what their role should be in the overall plan?
I object to that question, Chair. What the witness thinks is of absolutely no relevance and will not assist this commission in reaching its decision in terms of the reference, in their terms of reference. I can refer you, Chair, with respect to day 15, where you made a ruling in this regard. Page 1647.
Senziwe isigqibo ngale nto ethethwa ngumama ngoku kusho umhlekazi uNgelwane uzosifundela yona.
It in fact starts at 1646 at line 2, and I'll read the entire thing for. Mr. Bezos said, do you think that it is in accordance with the law that you should yourself told us about proportionality? Is that an appeal to the statement to police? I'm reading it as it appears, Chair, that's the language. Do you think that it is in accordance with the law that you have yourself told us about proportionality? Is that an appeal to the statement to police to use proportional force? The pointing of a firearm must lead to the death of the person pointed at. And then a whole host of things follow. And this is the ruling you make in that regard at page 1647. Line 13. Chairperson, may I please ask what the witness thinks about what's wrong or right when a gun is pointed is a matter for him? I'm not sure whether his views on the point will assist us to answer the questions we called upon to answer.
Ingxaki anayo kumhlekazi uNgalwane kokuba ubuzwa ugeneral ngokuba ucinga ntoni ngento ethize. Isigqibo esenziwa apha nguchairperson xa kubuza umhlekazi uBezos phaya ebuza elinye inqina ukuba ucinga ntoni ngento ethize. Wathi uchairman ayinakusinceda leyo nto into ecingwa nguye makuvele ubungqina baloo nto.
So what the witness thinks is irrelevant.
Ngoku ke asikwazi ukuthi cingwa lingcina elokuba mna ezami ingcingo zethu.
Thank you, Chair. The question being posed is distinguishable from the examples given by my learned friend, Mr. Ngwana. I'm not asking Major General Mpembe as to his opinion on a matter of law, nor am I asking as to his opinion on some other matter that is irrelevant to this Commission's inquiry. I'm asking him, in light of the standing order which requires that a plan be broken down in detail for each section commander, whether the failure to do that here could give rise to a risk of confusion with respect to the briefing of members. And as the overall commander, his opinion on whether that raises a risk is entirely relevant and appropriate and is not a question of law.
Ngothi andibuze apha ngokuba ucinga ntoni ngomthetho. Ndibuza into ebhalela okokuba ukunganikeza ingxelo ephelele zezizikomanda kubantu aba basebenza nabo ayinako na ukuba ibe yimbangela ukuba kukho ukungavisisani.
We already got the answer from the witness. He doesn't think it's necessary. Remember, I put to him 10.2c in the context such as the present. Said that where you have a detailed plan setting out what each section should do, it's not necessary then for the section commander or leader to come with his own detailed written plan. That was the point that was put to the witness, and he agreed with that. Now, is this a variation of that point?
uthi umgcinisihlalo ayibeke
I mean, Mr.
uyabuzwa le nto
Luwana
nje
is right in saying
laphendula elingqina kokuba akunasidingo
what
sokokuba
a witness thinks in itself is normally relevant. It may be
Ukuthi
relevant
yena.
in certain circumstances. The
Ngokwakhe.
example he quoted from of an earlier ruling of mine relates to what the witness thought about the law, which, if I may permit to say so myself, was clearly a correct ruling. But in this context, what exactly is the basis of the question? Are you asking just what he thinks in an abstract? Or are you asking him as a man with some expertise in the field? Are you asking for to express an opinion as an expert on what happened on that particular day? I don't quite understand what the thrust of the question is.
uxelela ukuba umbuzo wakhe awucacanga ngawucacisa kakuba ubuza leyo elingqina kokuba lona ngumbono walona uthini njengomntu onamava kulo msebenzi ngomuntu oyingcutshe kanjani okokuba abuzwe ngento ayicingayo iza kusinceda ngantoni.
Chair, I'm asking the question of Major General Mpembe as the overall commander and therefore the person responsible for ensuring compliance with the standing order. I'm also probing the rationale for that standing order and how in the specific circumstances of what he's described as a fluid, changing set of circumstances, whether he thinks complying with the standing order and requiring further detailed plans by section commanders would have reduced the risk of any confusion with respect to briefing. I am happy to move on, however, if the Chair and the Commissioners are of the view that this is not a question that should be put to Major General Mpembe.
You won't have an option if I so. You won't have an option if I so rule, will you? You're not proceeding with the question. But let me ask the witness.
Manje ubuze lo mbuzo ke mina kanje kusho umgcinisihlalo.
You've thought a lot since the events of that week about what went wrong and what could have been done, which would have either prevented what happened or certainly reduced the extent of the calamity. Is that right?
That's correct, Chairperson.
Uyavuma ugeneral okokuba lokwenzeka lento kubeluke ecinga ngayo kuba intoni beyingenziwa intoni kwakufanele ingenziwa
Now,
apha
you've told us
ebeyizokwenza
that
imeko
the section
ibhebhethe.
leaders didn't have detailed written plans themselves of what the members of their sections were to do. Do you think, now this is as the overall commander, a policeman of many years of experience, do you think that the failure to have those detailed plans on the part of the section leaders contributed in any way to the catastrophe that occurred?
Ngoku xa usoyicinga umva le nto uyibona ukungabi neplan ezibhalwe phansi ngeekomanda ezi zaba mhlawumbe zongeza yini kwisehlakalo esayesenzeka emva koko.
Chair, I'm not
No,
sure if it's
Chairperson.
permissible to object to the chairperson's question.
Well, objection it is, but it's permissible. If it's a bad objection, it isn't. So let's just carry on and get the answer to the question.
Chair, I just want to clarify what's happening here. The Human Rights Commissioner has produced an expert who's expressed certain opinions. The the South African Police Service have not produced thus far any witnesses who contradict certain of those opinions. In particular, Mr. De Rover has thus far declined to comment on those matters at all. If the South African Police Service is going to object to any member of the South African Police Service expressing his opinion on the matters on which Mr. White has expressed opinions, then those will stand uncontradicted. If that's what the South African Police Service want to achieve, they should understand that's what they are achieving, that it will be impossible for them to cross-examine Mr. White, and Mr. White's evidence will stand uncontradicted on all of these matters on which they apparently object to senior police officers expressing a professional opinion.
Uthi umhlekazi uBhatlenda ingxaki anayo lana kokuba apha sinepolisa eliphezulu kakhulu okungumuntu onamava okungiyena fanele aphendule imibuzo engaphikisa lintetho ezawuvezwa ngumhlekazi oWhite olinqina le-human rights. Xa kungenjalo ubungqina bukaWhite buyawungena apha bungaphikiswanga.
Mr. Butler, it's not as simple as that. For two reasons. Firstly, the final report of Mr. White's not yet been produced. So my understanding is part of the police's objection to answering White in the meanwhile is they're waiting for the final report. As far as this particular point is concerned, that's not in the original report, the provisional report that we got. And that's also one of the bases of the objection. But I thought I put the question in a way which would elicit an answer which would help us. Either the witness thinks that part of what happened was caused by this particular omission, or he doesn't. And as a senior experienced policeman, his views on the matter would be relevant. They would be admissible because in terms of the definition adopted by the appellate division of expert witness, he would qualify.
I would have thought with respect that the police service would wish those opinions to be before the commission.
uthi umhlekazi uBatlenda iyo lento enjitsho ebuzwa ebeyiphendula okokuba ingqina esinalo apha ngumuntu onamava gqitha emsebenzini wopolisa uye onokwazi okokuba awuphendule lo mbuzo ovela ngobungqina bukaWhite noma engayivezi eliphuzo uWhite kwangoku xa livela apha xa engaliphendulanga ugeneral kuyawuba ubungqina obungakhanyelwanga.
Chair.
Ms. Leroux, can you perhaps leave this point for a moment? I think you indicated you would, and we can revisit it later. I understood you to say you were prepared to move on. So this isn't going to destroy the structure of your cross-examination, is it? If you leave it for the moment. Because I want to discuss it with my colleagues. Because as Mr. Budden has said, and Mr. Chaskin has said, the future conduct of cross-examination and so forth may well be determined by this point. So it's not something we should rush into making a ruling on. So if you can move on to something else for the moment, then we can always return to it later. You're not going to...
No, Chair. Chair, I can't...
Sorry, I should have... colleagues and I would like to discuss the point and before the ruling is given, because it may be important for what happens in respect of other questions, points of cross-examination. So if it's convenient for you, if you can move on to deal with something else, then we can revert to it at a later stage.
Umgcinisihlalo uthi lento athetha ngayo ibaluleke gqitha ngoku emva kokuba sive intetho zolamadoda amabini okokuba imibuzo ezawulandela emva kwale xesha izawuxhumana nalento evezwa ngoku akathanda okokuba yena nekomishina benze isigqibo bangathethi ngalento basezawudibana bathethe phambi kokuba kwenziwe isigqibo xa kungekho enye into angaqhubekela ngayo phambili.
Thank you, Chair. Just for clarity, when I said I could move on, it would be in the face of a ruling that the question be disallowed. So certainly if the ruling is that the question is permitted, we will return to it. But I can now move on. Continuing the theme of the paper trail, Major General Mpembe, on Friday during your cross-examination by my learned friend Mr. Gumbi, you offered to produce an SMS that you still had on your phone. Has that production taken place? Have you produced the SMS you mentioned on Friday?
Uyakhumbula ngolesihlanu xa ubuzwa nguGumbi apha wathi kukho i-SMS onayo ongasivezela yona Unayo ngoku?
I've never been asked to produce, Chairperson, but I do have it. I can produce it tomorrow.
Uthi uGeneral ndathetha ukuba ikhona kodwa akho muntu wacela uba ndize nayo xa ifuneka ndikeza nayo ngomso.
And Major General Mpembe, are there other SMSs for the period of time that you were involved with? Let me rephrase that. Are there other SMSs on your phone that relate to the same period of time in the middle of August that you could produce to the Commission? And if there are, could I ask you to produce all SMSs that you still have on your phone that could be relevant to the Commission?
Kukho ezinye SMS onazo eziphathelene nento ezizeka ngo-August ezingakwazi ukuba luncedo apha?
I do not have, Chairperson.
Andinazo.
Major General Mpembe, did you use email at all when you were overall commander of the operation at Marikana?
Lixesha uyi-overall commander phaa eMarikana, General, kukho ii-emails owazenza wazisebenzisa?
No, Chairperson, as there were people who were instructed to do other work where emails could be used.
Kwakukho abanye babesebenza nge-email, mna andizange.
And who were the people instructed to perform other tasks that used email?
Buzo kokuba ngoobani ke abanye babephethe apho kwakusetyenziswa khona ii-emails.
Chairperson, as I've said that when there was any letter that was written for Marikana, it would be sent by email to either to the operational commander or to the cluster commander, or it would be obtained from the province.
Xa kukho incwadi yayibhala noma isazise sasithize sasikhutshwa ngencwadi sasizawuthunyelwa ku-operational commander noma kwi-cluster commander yaphaya kulaa ndawo.
And according to my knowledge, all those documentations were disclosed to the Commission.
Ngokwazi kwami ke yonke leyo mibhalo iveziwe apha kule commission.
Major General Mpembe, when you say that letters for Marikana were sent by email, what letters are you referring to?
Uthetha ngezincwadi ezaziya noma ezazithunyelwe eMarikana zeziphi?
Chairperson, I'll speak about the collapse that were made for the Potchefstroom, and those are the letters that I'm referring to.
Thetha njengento ezincwadi ezizazibiza abantu okokuba makuyiwe ePotchefstroom kokwenziwa ntoni, zezo ndithetha ngazo.
During the period 12 to 16 August, was email used to communicate by yourself or any of the other members of the JOC?
Umbuzo kokuba phakathi komhla ka-12 kude kube mhla ka-16 kukho ii-email ezasetyenziswa ezazithetha ngezinto eziphathelene nesehlakalo saseMarikana, uthi uGeneral hayi.
Major General Mpembe, there were landlines at the JOC as well, correct?
Andithi phaya kwi-JOC kwakukho ucingo lalifakiwe apho.
Chairperson, I need to establish whether there were landlines, because I remember first the JOC was on another place and I shifted it to another one, whether landlines were there. But what I do know is that the cell phones were there, the radios were there. We do also have a television that was there.
Into endisayikhumbula zi-cellphone ezazikhona, i-radio ezi, kukhona ne-TV yayikhona apha. Ndisakhumbula ukuba i-landline ucingo lasendlini lalikhona nalapho, ngoba i-JOC yayikwenye indawo ndayisusa ndayisa kwenye.
Because if there could have been a landline, so arrangement should have been made with the management of loanmen.
Ukube kwakukho ucingo olulasendlini kwakufanele kwenziwe amalungiselelo ne-management yakwa-loanmen okokuba lingasetyenziswa.
That's what I'm saying, then I need just to confirm later.
Yiko nje ndithi fanele ke ndiyojonga ndibuze okokuba yayikhona nje njengale.
If anything turns on the point, I suggest you address a query to Lonman, who will be able to tell you whether landline was available on the two places where the JOCOM was situated. I don't think the witness obviously doesn't know. So let's not spend further time with him.
umgcini sihlalo uthi lowo mbuzo ungabuza abakwalon mina kokuba yayikhona na into enjengaleyo elingqina linakuyazi lento masingachithi ixesha ngayo.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We'll take it up with our learned friends for linemen. Major General Mpembe, could I now ask you to turn to the topic of video evidence, and specifically if you could turn to Exhibit L.
Singeza apha ke
Before we
ngoku
take up the topic of
kubungqina
video,
bevideo.
evidence, I think it's appropriate that we take a short comfort break for those in need of such a break. So we'll adjourn for 5 minutes.
Make sithi nje kubetha imizuzu emihlanu ngaphandle.
The thing for this scary white one to call to this. I'll just submit your statement and say this is my opinion. How long have we been waiting for this so-called? Of course, that's what they do, and then I panel. And you see, it's okay panel, so no, those are just provisional opinions which I have now. I have it.
Commission resumes.
The Commission resumes. I'm sorry we didn't tell the General that we were going to start. I assumed he was in the room. But he's shown us how fleet of foot he is. You're still under oath, Major General. Mr. Lewis?
Sengaphansi kwesifungo general njengoba sibona ukuba hayi indoda isakwazi nokubaleka.
Major General Mpembe, if you could turn to slide 170 in Exhibit L. And for the record, it's a slide recording the events of the 16th. It's headed a detailed sequence of events, timestamp 1325, and the two bullet points. The first states Captain Dennis Adriao, the police's media liaison officer, informed both of the video operators of the SAPS that a journalist had reported to him that the video operators of POP, who were in civilian clothing, were identified as, quote, police spies by the protesters and might be killed if they remained in the general media group. Second bullet point, Captain Adriao informed the video operators of POP about the information. Based on this information, they withdrew from the scene and returned to the JOC.
Uveza apha ke kwislide 170 apho kwavela khona into yokuba intatheli eziziye zakhokelokuba zingongqothoza phaya mazisuswe. UCaptain Adriao waxelela ivideo operators zakwaPopo kokuba kukho le ngxelo mazisuke apho zabe seziyasuka ziya kwijoko.
Major General Mpembe, does Captain Adriao have the authority to withdraw the video operators in this way? Is that how we must understand the slide, that it was Captain Adriao who decided to withdraw them, or was it the video operators themselves that decided to withdraw?
Buza ngokuba uCaptain Adriao ubenayo na igunya lokuba abasuse aba be video recorders noba ngabo abazihambela bona ngokwabo.
Sorry, Mr. Chairperson. In fairness to the witness, I think that the slide itself, which is not evidence, is slightly misleading, and that the version that we have been informed of as evidence leaders is that the message was ultimately conveyed, I think, to Colonel Mere and in due course to Brigadier Carlitz, and that the ultimate instruction to withdraw came from Colonel Mere.
Well, in the light of that information, I take it you don't persist in the question.
That's correct, Chair.
Usefumene ukuba ingxelo ihamba kanjani umuntu wasusa i-video operators ukuba ngu-Colonel Mere.
Major General Mpembe, when did you become aware that there were no SAPS video operators recording the events on the 16th? When did you become aware that they had been withdrawn?
I think that question is a bit too broadly stated. What you put related to two video operators who were on the copy. There were, of course, other video operators, SAPS video operators, operating water cannons, and some of them in aeroplanes, and some of them in Yalas and in Yala. So the question is too broadly based for the facts as we have them. Perhaps you'd like to reformulate it?
Thank you, Chair.
Uthi makawucacise umbuzo othetha ngeziphi i-video operator ngoba zazi zininzi phaya ezinye zazithatha ziphezulu kwi-helicopter ezinye zikuma-water cannons kuyo yonke indawo.
Major General Mpembe, when did you become aware that these two video operators had been withdrawn and returned to the JOC? When did you become aware of that?
Thetha ngeze zimbini ekuthethwa ngazo apha weva nini okokuba ziye zaphindisela emva ejoko?
After the incident.
Emva kokuba sesenzekile esehlaka.
Correct, Chairperson.
Emva kokuba sekudutyuliwe.
And how did you become aware that they'd been withdrawn?
Wayiva kanjani ngabani la?
I was informed by Major General Annandale,
ndaxelelwa nguMajor General Annandale
who was always at the Joko.
owayephaya eJock lonke ixesha.
Major General Mpembe, just so we can get it clear, did General Annandale tell you they'd been withdrawn when you came back from the Jock, having gone up in the helicopter? Is that when he told you?
Emva kokuba usubuyile apha wawuyakhumbula uba wahambe ngehelicopter, emva kokuba sowubuyile waxelela uMajor General.
No, Chairperson, not at that time. It was long after that time.
Xesha elide emva koko singelo xesha ndifika.
Major General Mpembe, moving on to your supplementary statement, which I'm told is not yet an exhibit. It's SAPS 5B. That's apparently our internal reference. It won't make any sense to anyone else. This is the one-page, the short supplementary statement.
Is this the statement that you handed us, 3 paragraphs, dealing with the lack of a computer?
That's correct, Chair.
That is not an exhibit, yes, you're correct. So that will be Triple H 34, unless Mr. Rwanda wants to take.
No, Chair.
Thank you. It will be so marked. Triple H 34. You've seen the statement. I mean, you made it, but you've seen it recently.
Correct, Chairperson.
I don't know when you made it. It's not dated, but I don't think anyone will take that point. What do you want to ask him about the statement?
Major General Mpembe, the last sentence of the statement, it says, from the 13th to the 16th, there was no computer available for the use of the Jock personnel.
Apha uchaza ukuba kusuka mhla ka-13 kude kube mhla ka-16 kwangekho computer eyayisetyenziswa phaya eJock ngababa basebenza khona.
When you wrote this statement, what did you mean by for the use of the Jock personnel? What did you want the computer to be used for or not used for, as the case may be?
Uthetha ngaba basebenza phaya kwi-JOC
He doesn't say he wanted the computer to be used for anything. I think that question can be reformulated with more accuracy than you've displayed up to now with it.
Umuntu ubuza ntoni ngoba icacile le nto ithethwa apho kuba kungekho computer esetyenziswa ngabo babesebenza kwi-JOC.
Yes, thank you, Chair. That was mangled. Major General Mpembe, why did you note that there was no computer available for the use of the Jock personnel?
Ubuza ukuba yintoni ngokuveza le nto kokuba kungekho computer apho yayisetyenziswa.
On the 13th.
Well, your statement says from the 13th to the 16th, there was no computer available.
Uthi statement esithi kusuka nge-13 kude kube 16 bekungekho computer.
Correct, Chairperson.
How did the statement come to be made? It purports to be an affidavit, but it's not, because there's no attestation certificate by a Commissioner of Oaths. But we won't take that point. Did somebody ask you whether there was a computer? And did you then consider it necessary to make a statement? In other words, were you answering a query from somebody?
Akho into bewubuzwa yona kokuba kwi-computer phaya noma ibingekho uze ubhale statement.
Mr. Chairperson, if I can assist the witness again in this regard, there was a query from the evidence leaders about whether there was a computer in the Jock which served as an archive for the photographic and video material, and I think it was in response to that query that this affidavit was made, or the statement was made.
Uyachaza kumhlekazi uShakalisane kokuba iye savezwa ese statement ngoba kukho umbuzo wavezwa okokuba kwakho icomputer nayo kwakungathathwa ngayo imifanekiso ikanene ezinye ingxelo zasenzeka phaya eJock wathi ibingekho.
Major General Mpembe, we've got photographs of the JOC, and they show both desktop computers and laptop computers. And I'd like to understand why, given that we see computers in the JOC, you make a statement here that says that from the 13th to the 16th, there were no computers available for the use of JOC personnel.
Uthi sinemfanekiso ekhombisa iJOC phaya ziyabonakala iicomputers khona phaya ne-desktop. Yintoni ngokuvezwa kokuba kwakungekho zikhompyutha ezazingasetyenziswa ngaba bebebekela umsebenzi waseJOC?
As is correctly put by the evidence leaders, I was just told by Brigadier Pretorius that I should make a statement whether there was a computer at the JOC.
Njengoba ibekiwe ke apha ndiye ndabuzwa Pretorius okokuba ndiyichaze into yokuba yayikhona na ikhompyutha okanye nezasingenayo phaya eJOC.
And in my knowledge as a senior officer, when you talk about a computer for subs, you're talking about a computer that has to be linked with the mainframe in subs.
Xa ndithetha ke mna njengepolisa, xa ndithetha ngekhompyutha ndithetha ngekhompyutha exhome kwiikhompyutha ze-SAPS eyesibonisa.
In other words, what you say in the statement requires a bit of amplification to be correct. So it looks from the photograph as if there were computers in the JOC, presumably personal computers of particular people who were there. Is that right?
Correct, Chairperson.
So,
Xa kubonakala ikhompyutha phaya ziikhompyutha ezikhona azabo bantu basebenza kuloo ndawo.
so what you meant in the last sentence of paragraph 3 was something like, from the 13th to the 16th, there was no computer available for the use of the JOC personnel, which was, what, an official SAPS computer linked to their mainframe? Or what exactly did you have in mind?
I have in mind where they could register all what is supposed to be registered according to the subs IT. For example, registration of the docket, entering the all any other materials, or even sending the email direct to the JOC. That's what I was talking about.
Bendithetha ke mne apha kokuba bekungekho computer yamapolisa SAPS exhonye kwezi computer ezisebenzelana ne-subs apho ungakwazi ukuthumela khona ii-emails nezinye izinto eziya kwa-SAPS.
Do the SAPs have a code or a standing procedure or protocol relating to IT material? Is that what you're referring to?
I'm referring to the mainframe, Chairperson, where if you have to register a docket, it's only subs that have got that IT, not any other. And there were no points to have that.
Really what you're saying then in the last sentence, there was no computer linked to the mainframe SAP's computer. Is that what you meant?
Perfectly correct, Chairperson.
Apha ke ugeneral uchaza ikhompyutha ebeyingekho apho kokuba bekungekho computer ebekade ixhumene nezi computer ezisebenza phansi komthetho nemigaqo ye-SAPS.
Chair, I fear the chairperson has probably run well ahead of me, certainly, because the chairperson has referred to photographs which have not yet been submitted.
Photographs, you remember Mr. Shastelson said, they asked a question relating inter alia to a computer on which photographs and so on were referred to. What I was referring to was a document which had been handed in, hasn't yet been given exhibit number, but I don't know whether we need it in the light of the answers we've been given. It's the... Huh?
Mr. Chairperson, from the evidence leader's side, we would like that document to be an exhibit because it now appears from what the witness's answers are that he misunderstood our request, that our request wasn't properly conveyed.
Now, Mr. Shastelson, I've already put in the statement, the quasi-affidavit, as Triple H 34. But I think that Mr. Ngwana is ahead of you. He's referring to the fact I spoke about a photograph. And there is in the bundle of documents we got, which I think, to be fair, the SAPS people may not have got, there is a photograph of the JOCOM. And it does look from it as if there were computers there. But I take it they were personal computers, or laptops, of particular people. And they weren't computers as described by the witness in his amplification of the statement. Am I correct, Mr. Ngwana?
Well, I'm not sure, Chair. Firstly, the statement doesn't refer to any annexure, so I see the chairperson has stapled them together. My understanding was Triple H 34 is a one-page document, which is a statement.
I didn't staple anything together. I was given a number of documents which were clipped together. And I've forgotten what these special clips are called. Sorry? Bulldog clips. And among the documents we got, clipped together with this bulldog clip, in addition to the quasi-affidavit referred to, was a photograph of the JOCOM. And it does look from that photograph as if there were laptops there. But the witness has explained that he wasn't referring to that. He understood the question to relate to an SAPS computer linked to the mainframe. And that's what he meant, and that is effectively the way the last sentence of the statement is to be interpreted. Now, does that satisfactorily resolve the difficulties?
Yes, Chair, and I withdraw my accusing the chairperson unfairly of stapling
I'm sure you had no
photographs.
intention to be unfair to me or to anyone else, but I accept the withdrawal. Shall we carry on?
I shall wait until an attempt is made to introduce these photographs into evidence, Chair, then I'll deal with it then.
Well, Chair, let me do that right now. There are two photographs which we would like to be exhibited. The first is identified with the tag 1020202. This is the photograph where there is someone writing on a whiteboard in the foreground. If that could be exhibit HH35. And then the other photograph of the JOC showing desktop computers and two blue plastic chairs, if that could be HH36.
uthi uza kusibonisa imfanelo embini ngoku yecomputer yefoto phaya ifoto ezimbini ibonisa umuntu ebhala phaya kwibhodi emhlophe enye inecomputer.
Copies we were given haven't got any numbers on, but the first one shows, as you say, they're not blackboards, they're actually whiteboards, aren't they? It's actually a large
Flip
piece.
chart, yes.
Sorry?
It's a flip chart.
Flip chart. And someone's writing on a flip chart, and it looks like the words injured members have been written in the bottom right-hand corner of the photograph. That's the one you're referring to?
That's correct, Chair.
And the second one is shows two blue chairs. So various other things, but it shows two blue chairs, and there looks like a white X above the chairs. Is that the other photograph?
That's correct, Chair. The X is the reflective jacket being worn by the person sitting on the chair.
I see. Now, do we know the provenance of these photographs?
Mr. Chairperson, if I could interrupt here, and it may be relevant to their numbering as well. These are photographs taken by, I think, Captain van Heerden of the JOC on the 16th. One of the issues which we hope to do, either by persuading the SAPS to lead it in chief with Colonel Scott or in our cross-examination, is to have the whole set of Captain van Heerden's photographs introduced as an exhibit formally before the Commission. At the moment, these photographs are on the SAPS hard drive, but are not formally exhibits before the Commission. And that may affect the numbering of these exhibits because there are, in fact, I think 7 or 8, no, more. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19.
I'm not sure that... Yes, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm not sure what Mr. Roux wants to make of these photographs. If you simply want to ask him about something in the JOC, it will show him that it can be seen on the photograph. There's no reason to think that if you put something to him within the JOC, which in fact was there, that he will deny it. So let's see what do you want to do with these photographs at the moment? You want to mess up Mr. Chasterson's order of photographs, or do you want to, or do you want to establish that something was in the JOC? Because there's no reason to think that if it was in the JOC, and if the witness saw it, that he will falsely deny that it was there. So, what point are you up to? Or you want to conceal it from us at this stage until you ask the witness the question?
Into afuna ukuyiveza ngale mfanekiso phaya njengoba umnumzana Shackleton uthi uziphethe ezi photos kwi-SAP hard drive. Into afuna ukuyichaza kwangoku ngazo.
Chair, I don't think I'll be messing up Mr. Chaskelson's photographic exhibit in due course, because it's only these two that we wanted to introduce for now. And the point is to understand, in light of General Mpembe's statement that there were no computers available.
He didn't say that. He said he's made
yes,
it
and
clear.
now we understand what that means.
So if now that's been clarified, you need the photograph.
Yes, because I'd also like to understand on the theme of the paper trail and whether a full search has been made and all contemporaneous documents have been placed before this commission, is to ask whether the 5 laptop computers and 2 desktop computers that we see in the JOC on the evening of the 16th, where the documents from those and their users have been provided.
Well, I understand that, but you don't need the photographs for that. The way to do it, if I may say so, is to ask him if there were computers, laptop computers. Depending on his answer, whether he was aware of them, you can then ask him what happened to them and if he knows. But I don't think you need the photographs for the moment. So may I suggest you carry on without the photographs and see how far you get.
Chair, if I may just come in for the purposes of good order. I think that questions have been asked specifically of these 2 photographs. So for the purposes of the record, we might need to identify the 2 photographs and hence have them marked as exhibits.
Marked them yet, but Ms. LaRue suggested that. But I mean, when we read the record and we see that these photographs are going to be handed in as part of Captain van Heerden's photographs, but if the only purpose of the question is to establish that there were indeed computers in the JOC, then we don't really need the photographs for that if the witness admits that he saw computers, isn't it so?
Chair, there are also other aspects of the JOC reflected in the photographs that I would like to question Major General Mpembe about beyond the computer.
They were on the piece hard drive, so we will put the first one with the words injured members at the bottom right-hand corner on the flip chart. We'll call that Triple H 35. And the second one, which shows 2 chairs and a member, I think it's a member, with a black jacket with a white X on the back. We'll call that one Triple H 36. I'm a little bit concerned about something. From the way Mr. Ngulwana reacted, I got the impression that he was taken by surprise. So was he, in fact, given notice these photographs would be used?
Yes, Chair, they were on the index provided.
Yes,
And copies were provided this morning, printout copies.
I hear copies were provided this morning. I've just received it now, and I didn't know that it was referred to in the list of exhibits to which they were going to refer. I now see it. It's 22. It's, I think it's 23, item 23 of the list.
So notice was given. So I think Mr. Rubin then carry on.
Mr. Chairperson, I hate to take this further, but given that the entire set is going to come in, can I ask that the numbering is different and that they be, I forget which exhibit we're on, but if it's tripled, these are numbers 17 and 19 of the full set. And if we number them as triple W, whatever it is, I forget the number, 0.17 and 0.19, we will then have the full set in one coherent place at the end, which will, I think, be better.
Look at Hemrod suggests that the way to do it is when you come in to hand the full set of photographs, you can make the point that 2 of the photographs have already been before the Commission with these 2 numbers I've given them. But there's no major reason why these photographs, informative as they are, should not appear twice in the record, as long as there's no confusion.
Thank you, Chair.
Major General Mpembe, with respect to the 2 desktop computers that we see in the second photograph, Triple H 36, do you know whose computers those were in the JOC? Do you know where they...
No, Chairperson.
Major General Mpembe, who would know who provided those 2 desktop computers?
Ubani ozoba nolwazi lokuba zezikabani ezi computer?
There were people that were coming from head office and so on, and then Major Edendale could know about it.
Kwakho ababevela e-head office babekhona phaya no Major General Annandale uzawuba nalo ulwazi.
Again, I would imagine that this is the sort of thing you can sort out by an inquiry to the SAPS.
Yes, Chair.
And they'll give you the answer, I'm sure, that in trouble.
Yes, Chair.
Cinga uba xa ungabuza apha kwi-SAP mhlawumbi ungayifumana impendulo ukuba zezikabani ezi zinto. Ewe.
Major General Mpembe, with respect to the other photograph and the 5 laptop computers that can be seen in that photograph, do you know whose computers those were?
Chair, I don't see a single laptop computer. Perhaps my learned friend can add him. There's a better picture.
Laptop.
Uthetha nge-laptops ezininzi phaya yena uthi ubone yedwa umhlekazi ungala.
Chair, HHH 35 is unfortunately quite dark. During the lunch adjournment, I'll sit with my learned friend for SAPS, and if you zoom in, you can count 5 laptop computers on the desk that you see, the large table you see in the middle and the desk in the corner. But the crisp question for Major General Mpembe is, do you know whose laptop computers were in the job?
No.
Zezikabani ezo laptops.
All right. Do you know whose computers they were? I mean, I take it you saw computers. I mean, let's not get involved in photographs. You saw computers in the room where the JOCOM was meeting, right?
Correct, Chairperson.
Was any one of those computers your computer?
No, Chairperson.
Do you know who were the owners or certainly the possessors of the computers that you saw?
No, Chairperson, except that I only saw Colonel Scott holding a personal computer. That's the only person that I saw.
Unye nje umuntu endambona ephethe ikhompyutha lezi ezincinci zakhe ephatha ngesandla uColonel Scott. Ezezinye ayinyani zazi. Ubuzo kokuba enye kwakungeyakhe na uthi uColonel bengenayo. uGeneral bengenayo.
Am I correct in assuming, I'm told this by Advocate Hemrod, that if one looks at this photograph, Triple H35, in a clear form, one can actually see people sitting in front of the computers. Is that correct? Well, look, it's nearly 1 o'clock. Let's take the adjournment now. Those who don't need lunch can spend the lunchtime looking at this photograph on a computer and seeing who's sitting where. Maybe if you found what you want, just before we resume, you can ask the General to look and see if he can identify the people. And then we carry on. Will half an hour be enough for that task? We'll adjourn till 1:30.
Xa ungena ngo 1:30.